Hello everyone, it's me, the on-time Lord Haven. Am I on time? Yes, I am. A rare occurrence, I've made it. Hello, today we'll be talking about House Tyrell, similar to the Bolton livestream a couple of weeks ago. I'm sort of going to do some commentary. I feel like that's a good approach to my live streams, to just do commentaries on my videos, sort of run through them, talk about them. Tell you what, release a director's cut in the future. Let me adjust. I always have to adjust my chair at the start. There we go. Oop. Come in. In we go. Beautiful. Hi guys, because it's the early stages of the live stream with people coming in, I'm gonna address every single person coming in for the first minute or so. Hello Bloombler, hello Will, hello April, hello Lala of House Loopsy, hello Flippy Dippy of House Do, hello Minnie, hello Michael. That's it, flower emojis in the chat everyone, we're talking about the Tyrells. You know, as with all of my videos, you know, whether they're the CK3 ones or the animated ones, I always have to, do a lot of research. And every time I jump into the research, I always appreciate a house way more than I did previously. Because I always like the Tyrells and the vibe of the Tyrells. And I enjoyed a comment on my video, someone saying, I can't remember who it was, but they said that House Tyrell are like a fairy tale house. You know? They're kind of like a perfect fairy tale house thrown into the hyper-realistic... well, no, not necessarily hyper-realistic, but brutal setting of Westeros. And I always, with the big white castle, and they're all handsome knights, and the women are pretty and courteous, and so on. And so I always like the Tyrells. Sorry, while going on that tangent, I got distracted because the stream was going weird. So I've always liked the Tyrells, but like diving into them, I was like, oh yeah, they're actually... These guys are really accumulating power. Like, just like their house words, they really are growing strong. And that happens all the time. Like, my CK3 Ironborn video made me actually like the Ironborn, because I was like, actually, some of the lore here is kind of metal. Okay, we've got 30 odd viewers in the live stream. That'll jump up, obviously. But I think it's time we should get started. So, yeah. I'll go through the obligatory stuff. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, what are you doing? You got to subscribe to Fantasy Haven. It's the 1 year anniversary of Fantasy Haven. In how many days? Not the Monday coming up, but the Monday after. So just over a week. Which is pretty fun, and I'm kind of hoping to hit 20k subs. Like this video, it really helps the video spread and the algorithm, all that stuff, that really helps. And, have a fun discussion in the chat. If you have any questions for me, any theories you want me to talk about, any video suggestions, send me a super chat and I will prioritize that and answer it because, of course, this is my job and super chats help me support the channel. Okay, we've gone through the obligatory stuff. Let's jump into the video. Have we got the audio on? Yeah, there we go. How did a family of stewards become Lords Paramount of the Reach? This is my little Fantasy Haven theme. Music is by, all the music is by Kevin MacLeod. It's royalty-free stuff. He makes loads of fun little songs for creators to use. That's pretty awesome. How have they accrued so much power in King's Landing? With the help of Quinn the GM, we'll be exploring the history of House Tyrell. See, here's a little behind-the-scenes stuff. I always make sure that stuff is in the intro. I always have questions in the intro. That always helps. So instead of just jumping in and being like and subscribe, I'm like, okay, well, I need a little intro so that people aren't turned away immediately. But also, what I do is I tease what will come later. So how did this happen? How did a house of so-and-so become this? How did this person do this? Find out later. It's like a TV show. You got to do a little teaser at the beginning to get people involved. See, these video commentaries are not just about the lore. It's also about how giving you some YouTube tips, I guess.
Thank you very much for having me, Mr. Late Lord Haven. My name is Quinn the GM.
Utterly disgraceful, by the way, that I give this man, Quinn, I give him the time of day, I give him the platform, the views, maybe the extra subs, to say whatever he wants, and he calls me the Late Lord Haven. Utterly disgraceful. Never doing a collab with him again. Never. Riverlands video when? My next CK3 video will not be the Riverlands video. I've changed my mind. It is going to be the Reach video. It's going to be the Reach one. I've been avoiding it because it's huge, but I'm like, you know what? I've just done a Tyrell video. It makes sense for the next video to be every Reach house in CK3 explained. That will either be coming out on next Friday or the Friday after, depending on how fast I am. So, yeah. Hosta Quinn. Honestly, Quinn is the Hosta Tully to my Late Lord Haven. You know what I'm saying? To my Walder Frey. He's my overlord. He has more power than me, he has more subs than me, he has more views than me, and eventually I'm planning to backstab him and steal it all from him.
For those of you who might not know, I also make content about A Song of Ice and Fire here on the YouTube. Today I'll be joining to talk about one specific area of Tyrell history, and I'm really excited to do so. The Tyrells are one of my favorite houses, and if you enjoy the Tyrells or just A Song of Ice and Fire in general, we also have a video up over on my channel where we go over theories regarding Mace Tyrell potentially being a secret genius.
Yeah, if you guys haven't watched that already, you probably have. But it's on Quinn the GM's channel. It's called Mace the Ace. Oh no, it's not. It's sorry. It's called Is Mace Tyrell a Secret Genius? Where he's arguing that Mace Tyrell isn't, and I'm jumping in and slightly tongue in cheek, I'm arguing that Mace Tyrell is a secret genius. If you want my genuine take, it's that he's neither. Right? Like, he's not an idiot. He's not a buffoon. Like, in the TV show, Mace Tyrell is pretty much a weird amalgamation of Mace Tyrell in terms of, like, who he is in the story and his name and his position, but in terms of personality, other than that, he's basically just Sahara Swift. Like, he's a cowardly idiot and a bumbling buffoon, and it's sort of, again, it's just a show taking away a bit of nuance that didn't need to be stripped away. Like, I get it, the women run House Tyrell, Olenna Redwine is the cunning mastermind, Marjorie's a sort of almost like her protege, and all Renly cares about is fighting, and Mace is a big dumb buffoon who sings like whoa. But in the show, you know, he is in the show in the books. In the books, he's a bore. He's buffoonish, definitely, self-aggrandizing, but he's not an idiot. He's a smart man. That's how I see it. Mace is a smart man. He knows what he's doing. He's not a genius. He relies a lot on his mother, but he's not some idiot, and I quite like that. Oh, we got the Myco haters in the chat. Lala Loopsy does not like the Myco. I cannot comment, but yeah. I can't sit here and criticize other people's artwork when I draw big-eyed freaks, you know what I'm saying? I love Natalie Dormer. I do too, Lala Loopsy. Okay.
Take it away, Fantasy Haven.
Feel free to give him a sub. Okay, yeah,
we
can skip all the sub stuff.
I know about Mace.
Blah blah blah.
All the links are in the descriptions.
Yep.
Now, let's return to the Reach.
The fertile land of the Reach was once ruled by the Gardener Kings. During the coming of the Andals, Garth IX, Merle I, and Gwaine V peacefully integrated this new people. So these three kings were known as the Sage Kings. So the Gardeners were the kings of the Reach. They're descended from the sort of mystical figure from the Age of Heroes known as Garth the Green Hand. And supposedly Garth the Green Hand sired a whole bunch of children who are all legendary figures in their own right, who went on to be the progenitors of major houses in Westeros. So, for example, Floris the Fox is supposedly the daughter of Garth the Green Hand, and her descendants are House Florent and House Ball. And one of Garth the Green Hand's children is the Gardener, the first Gardener King, and then you have the Gardeners took over the Reach. And what else? There's Maris the Maid. Let me see if I can find... Actually, yeah, let's see if I can find a fun little list. Who do we have? Yeah, Garth the Gardener. John the Oak, supposedly the progenitor of House Oakhart. Gilbert of the Vines, supposedly led to House Redwine. Foss the Archer, led to House Fossaway. Maris the Maid married King Uther of the Hightower, which led to House Hightower. What else do we have? Bors the Breaker led to House Bulwer. As I said, Floris the Fox led to House Florent, House Bull, and House Peak. Harlan the Hunter led to House Tarley. And so on and so forth. So, Garth the Green Hand led to the Gardener Kings, who ruled the Reach in their own right. They ruled in High Garden. And then they sat in this seat called the Oaken Seats, which was, carved into a tree. And in this part of the video, I talk about the three Sage Kings. Mern, Garth, blah blah. I can't remember their names. What are their names again? All the Gardeners basically have the same names.
Gardener Kings. During the coming of the Andals, Garth the Ninth, Merle the First, and Gwaine the Fifth.
Yeah, Garth, Merle, Gwaine. They decided to peacefully integrate the Andals to the Reach instead of aggressively fighting against them. So, the Starks and the Boltons and so on pushed Argo 7 Star out of the north, which sort of prevented the Andal people and culture from spreading up north. In the Vale, the First Men and the Andals fought. Same thing happened in the Stormlands. But in the Reach, these three generations of kings went, okay, let's integrate you peacefully. Right? You can work for us. You can serve us. You can trade with us. Which sort of feeds into this idea of the Reach being sort of an enlightened region of Westeros. It's prosperous, it's sunny, it's fertile, it's chivalrous, it's civilized. And that's at least how they view themselves and how they're probably viewed throughout Westeros. We got about 40 odd viewers right now. That's pretty chill. This stream was kind of last minute. Didn't advertise it that much, but thanks for coming. Okay.
Peacefully integrated this new people. When a great Andal warrior named Sir Alistair Tyrell became the sworn shield of Gwaine V, House Tyrell entered the annals of history. Sir Alistair's firstborn son became a notable knight, but was slain in a tourney.
So yeah, I don't just want to sit here and repeat everything that's being said in the video. But the Tyrells are famously known as the stewards of the Gardeners. What's he reading that? They're known as the stewards of the Gardeners because one of the Sage Kings employed a Tyrell to be their sworn shield, and his second son wasn't a knight, he was a bookish lad, and he was made the steward of Highgarden, and he did a great job, and his son did a great job, and eventually they said, okay, let's make this a hereditary position. And so the Tyrells as a house were just the hereditary high stewards, that's it, high stewards of Highgarden. Which is why they're considered, when we get to the Robert's Rebellion bit, they're considered to be new money, in a way. They're not a new noble house, they're from the coming of the Andals, they're an ancient house. But they do not have the strongest claim to Highgarden. There are other houses in the Reach that have stronger claims to Highgarden. For example, House Florent have a stronger claim to Highgarden because they have they're descended from the Gardeners. I can't remember what the logic is exactly, but they have a closer tie. They have closer ties to House Gardener than House Tyrell, and so in terms of bloodlines, House Florent should technically be in charge of the Reach, but obviously we're skipping ahead a bit, but Aegon gave it to the Tyrells, and perhaps intentionally. Perhaps he intentionally handed it over to a slightly smaller, weaker house without a particularly strong claim. I know that would just cause instability, wouldn't it? Or maybe because he knew the Reach wouldn't be fully united behind House Tyrell, and so you wouldn't just replace the Gardeners with a big strong house that then says, okay, now we're rising up against you. I'm not sure. Are there many hereditary positions in Song of Ice and Fire? I mean, in a feudal system, hereditary is kind of the whole point. I know what you mean, though. In terms of this stuff, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there are any other examples of stewards being hereditary beyond House Tyrell. Samwell Tarly, rightful king of the Reach. That's an interesting point, actually. Let's dive into that. Let's find a cool frame to pause on. There we go. So the reason someone's saying Tarly, there's a theory about Sam Tarly technically having the best claim to the Reach. So this comes from the fact that, as I said, the Florence, through the bloodlines, have a stronger claim to Highgarden, and House Florent have sided with Stannis. Their lord was Lord Alistair Florent. Lord Alistair was burnt at the stake by Stannis and Melisandre and Selyse. He has a son called Alekine, who's currently hiding in Old Town, but he has 2 daughters, and the eldest of those 2 daughters is Melissa Florent, who marries Randall Tarly and is the mother of Sam Tarly. So let's say Alekine Florent were to die, perhaps during the raid on Old Town. That's quite interesting. If Sam is going to Old Town, he might actually meet his uncle. But yeah, not many people talk about that. The uncle on his mother's side. But yeah, if he's killed during the Greyjoy attack on Old Town, the Battle of Blood or whatever, then that means the Lord of Brightwater Keep through the Florent line, well, it's the Lady of Brightwater Keep would be Sam's mother, which means, well, it wouldn't actually be Sam because he's a Night's Watch, so he's forfeit all claim, so it would actually be his brother Dickon. So through the Florent line, Dickon Tarly would be the heir to Brightwater Keep, and if you take the Tyrells out of the picture, you could argue that Dickon Tarly is the heir to Highgarden and the Reach through the Florence connection, stronger connection to the Gardeners. But then you may say Dickon shouldn't take priority because he's getting that through his mother's line, whereas there are other male Florents like Axel Florent, who is Alistair Florent's younger brother. This is probably very confusing without a family tree. The only reason I'm remembering it like this, the only reason I'm like reeling it off is because I've literally just been going through the Houses of the Reach for my CK3 research and like the Florence. I was like, damn, it's kind of cool, all the connecting pieces. But yeah, maybe if we'll dive into this later. But if young Griff and John Connington do in fact invade the Stormlands, well, no, they have invaded the Stormlands. If they, let's say they succeed, and there's a whole thing about them having friends in the Reach, and we don't know who those friends in the Reach are. There are theories that House Tarly may be friendly to the Golden Company and the Targaryens. I think that's mostly based on the fact that the Tarlys fought again with the Mad King, but then so did everyone else in the Reach. But it's also based on the fact that during Kevin Lannister's epilogue, Randall Tarly, who's recently been named Master of Laws, is very dismissive about young Griff and the Golden Company invasion. He's like, he's a pretender, and John Connington isn't alive, and we don't have to worry about this. Perhaps he's deliberately seeding false information or lulling the small council into a false sense of security because he supports the invasion, and perhaps the goal of John Connington and Aegon VI is to overthrow the Tyrells and put the Tarlys in power, because they're not going to put the Florents in power because the Florents are loyal to Stannis. Although I suppose they could put Alekine Florent in charge, but maybe they're going to put Randall Tarly as the Lord Paramount. Imagine that, Randall Tarly is the Lord Paramount of the Reach, Tyrell Lannister as the Lord Paramount of the Westerlands. Maybe he went missing because Varys kidnapped him to prep him to be a puppet leader. Maybe Edric Storm as Lord Paramount of the Stormlands, bastard son of Robert. See, you're getting a team together. Young Griff's got a team. Yeah, maybe. But in terms of Sam Tarly taking over Highgarden or the Reach, through his mother's side, doesn't make sense if he's in the Night's Watch. But then again, the Night's Watch might not exist by the end of the book series. But I also feel like even if the Night's Watch doesn't exist, Sam becoming a maester feels like it makes the most sense for his character. And again, he wouldn't have any power, and I don't know if he'd want any. So what we have determined here is that either Randall Tarly will become Lord Paramount, or Alakine Florent will become Lord Paramount, or Sam Tarly will become Lord Paramount, or Dickon Tarly will become Lord Paramount. Yeah. Yes, Boomler. Boomler says, I really like the idea of young Griff's party having puppet lords for regions. This is, it's not a unique idea. I've sort of taken different theories from different people, but that's sort of how I view it. Having Edric Storm in charge of the Stormlands, Tyrek Lannister in charge of the Westerlands, you have these young, handsome boys taking over Westeros, sort of feeds into the whole young Griff and his men being the gallant heroes who storm in and overthrow the incompetent Mad Queen Cersei kind of thing. And in terms of who they'd want ruling the Reach, I don't know, maybe Mathis Rowan is the traitor, maybe Randall Tarly, maybe both, I'm not sure. But it can go lots of different directions.
Has made the office of High Steward hereditary. Thus the Tyrell
Baxter Redwine has the best hair in the entire books. What, just tufts of orange sticking out of his skull?
Tyrells became the royal stewards and have served the gardeners throughout history. A Tyrell lord ruled the Reach as regent during the minority of the child king Garland VI and
Oh, that's a good point. John Con being the... responding to the chat, John Con being Lord of the Stormlands. Yeah. No, that does make more sense. But in terms of legitimacy, having Robert's bastard son could be good. Maybe they will have Robert's bastard son as Lord of Storm's End, but then give the Stormlands to John Con. And then whoever their ally is in the Reach gets the Reach. Maybe Tyrek gets a Westerlands for the sake of having a Lannister. I don't know. Give us wins. Just give us wins, please. I want it. Okay. Where were we?
Stewards and have served the gardeners throughout history.
They've served the gardeners throughout history.
Ruled the Reach as regent during the minority of the child king Garland VI.
Yeah, so for this section I was just looking at all of the past pre-Targ Tyrells. So one who was a regent, and then...
And High Steward Sir Osmond Tyrell proved instrumental in reuniting the Reach after a bloody civil war known as the Anarchy.
So yeah, this is something I talk about more in my Manderley video, so I didn't really want to just go over it again and repeat myself for this video. But to just run through it, this guy was... where is he? Yes. This is Garth the 10th, who took the Oaken seat. He took the throne age 10, and he ruled for a long time. And in his old age, he sort of became weak and senile, and different forces and factions began to exploit him. And what he did is he had no sons, but he had at least 2 daughters, and he married one of those daughters to... I think I've actually got a good little portrayal here, right?
To House Manderley and House Peak going to war for control of
There we go.
Into war for control.
So he married one of his daughters to House Peak, and one of his daughters to House Manderley. And of course, both houses... I can't remember which daughter was the eldest. I think it was the one who married the Manderleys, but we may not know. But basically, both sides were like, okay, this is our ticket to become Kings of the Reach. Once Garth dies, we're married to one of his daughters, we can become King of the Reach. The Manderleys and the Peaks already had a rivalry from the past, which I mentioned in my Manderley video, sort of territorial disputes and all that stuff. Gardener King had to intervene. Garth the Fat, I think, had to intervene to stop them from skirmishing anymore. But the tension sort of builds up and explodes, and then it's a big civil war with several houses siding behind the Manderleys, several houses siding behind the Peaks, until the conflict went on for a decade and was known as the Anarchy, which may be inspired by the name of the English Civil War between King Stephen and Empress Matilda, which was also called the Anarchy. Yeah. I see Bitter Steelers in the chat saying House Peak is the best house in the Reach. I must remain neutral in these matters, but some would argue House Peak are dirty, dirty traitors. But, that's not my opinion. That's what some people are saying. Many people are saying this. Yeah, the Manderley video is cool. I might revisit that at some point and do a live stream about that one. Because my old Manderley live stream sucked. My old live streams were me, with layers on Photopea until I realised it's just way more fun to go through the video itself. But it is cool that there's just a house, that you have the River Mander, and the Manderleys owned the Castle Dunstanbury, and they were this powerful house that were driven into exile. And House Peak are known for having 3 castles on their sigil. See, I even have that here. That's actually a mistake. This peak shouldn't have 3 castles, because one of the castles is Turnpike, one of them is... Oh, sorry. One of the castles is Starpike, one of them is... I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. And the third one is Dunstanbury. So after the Anarchy, House Peak ended up driving House Manderley into exile with the help of a Gardener King, and they took the Manderley's castle, and that's why they have 3 castles on their sigil, because one of them is Dunstanbury. But that happens after this, so it doesn't make sense for this this Lord Peak character, Lord Lorimar Peak character, to have a 3rd sigil down here on his surcoat. That's an epic mistake, and I will now resign from YouTube forever. And although I did, what I did do was I edited the House Peak sigil, so it's 1 castle, because we never know when they got their 2nd castle. So I just played it safe, and I went, okay, back in the day they had 1 castle on their sigil, which represents Starpike.
Going to war for...
How are we doing? Any super chats? I will prioritise all super chat questions, of course. Of course, it helps the channel grow. This is my job, fellas. I gotta survive off of that super chat money. That's how I buy my bread and milk. That's how I'm not starving in the streets. Although I will prioritise patrons as well, actually. That's I think I'm shouting to the mic. Let me lower my voice a bit. Sorry, I shout when I get excited. But yes, usually when my patrons are in a chat, I will prioritise. Well, I will respond to them, super chat or not, just because it's a nice thing to do. Speaking of Lala Loopsy, I need to draw your character, don't I? Because you're a certain tier, and I need to draw your character. I've been very busy. I'm gonna make it look really good. Okay, where were we?
For control of Highgarden.
Oh yeah, we're talking about the Tyrells. God, talk about a tangent. Alright, let's move on.
10 years, Sir Osmond led an alliance to crush...
Yes, and then Sir Osmond Tyrell, after 10 years, led an alliance of various different houses to crush the Manderleys and the Peaks, and then install a second cousin of Garth X on the throne, and then order was restored in the Anarchy. And the Tyrells probably cemented their power even further.
As King Mern VI, Sir Robert Tyrell continued in his father's footsteps.
Yeah, and then his son Robert
He
married
was rewarded with
daughter,
marriage, taking King Mern...
and so King Mern's daughter, through her, that's how the Tyrells can claim descendancy from the Gardeners, and therefore some form of legitimacy in becoming Lords Paramount of the Reach after Aegon's conquest.
His daughter as his lady wife. Through their son Laurent, the main...
See how this boy's aging in the background during the generations? That's why these videos take 2 weeks.
Branch of Tyrells claimed descendancy from the Gardener kings of old.
And now we move on to the Quinn section, so everyone, we can all feel free to turn the video off or go to sleep or whatever at this bit. No, I'm just kidding. Quinn did a great job with this. I didn't know whether to put music under his section as well, but I decided against it. Yeah, I thought I'd keep it distinct as a Quinn section. But his style is really cool. He just sort of got some cool images, simple text, and he does a nice rundown, a nice breakdown of...
We now arrive at the era of the Dragon Kings. During Aegon's conquest, Mern VI Gardener, the King of the Reach, was killed in battle at the Field of Fire, which is a massive battle that resulted in the deaths of many people of the Reach and the Westerlands.
Yeah, the entire House Gardener were made extinct during the Field of Fire. How a several thousand-year-old ancient dynasty can be completely extinct after one battle is just a classic Gurmism. Yeah, it just... Rest in peace. And so, what happened is that Aegon the Conqueror descended on Highgarden, and the Tyrells, who are, of course, the stewards of Highgarden, threw open the gate and said, Listen, we're big fans. We don't want any beef. come in, we'll throw you a feast. And as a reward, Aegon named them the Lords Paramount of the Reach. So it's a way of showing, it's carrot and the stick. The stick in this case being a scaly nuclear weapon with wings. We will drive you extinct if you resist us. But if you open the gates and let us in, we will reward you with titles and riches and power. And like I said earlier, because the Tyrells aren't super powerful and don't have the strongest claim, their hold over the Reach isn't super strong, which may have been a deliberate ploy, at least initially, to sort of have it so the Reach isn't like united behind one particular house that could rise up against the Targs, but sort of we're in a state of uneasiness perhaps. But that could also have its downside, so probably not.
As Aegon marched on Highgarden, this house's former seat, he found it occupied by their stewards, the Tyrells, who were taking care of it in their absence. The Tyrells surrendered to Aegon immediately, and in exchange for this, Aegon named them as Lords Paramount of the Mander and the Chief Lords of the Reach. Following this, the Tyrells pretty much drop off the map for the next 120 years. We only hear 2 specific references to this.
Yeah, so very surprising, a bit like the Boltons, right? When I tried to look at for my Bolton video what they've been up to during the Targaryen era, and there's basically anything. There wasn't anything other than Lady Barbara Bolton. That was it. Barbara Bolton and Roose. And similarly for the Tyrells, there aren't that, despite being a major house, they don't play a huge role throughout the reign of the Targaryens. At least as we know, in terms of, we know from Fire and Blood Part 1, from the World of Ice and Fire, we know a bit about them, but maybe in Fire and Blood Part 2, if that ever comes out, there'll be an expansion. We'll know a bit more about what the Tyrells were up to.
Great house over that entire time period. The first of which is a Lord Tyrell who dies in the Dornish sands during the First War for the conquest of this last southern region of the continent.
So yeah, the classic house rivalry that we all love in Westeros. Got the Boltons and the Starks up north. We've got the Brackens and the Blackwoods, the Tullys and the Freys in the Riverlands. What else have we got? In the Westerlands, obviously, we have the Lannisters and the Reynes. In Dorne, we have a sort of rivalry between the Fowlers and the Ironwoods. And then we also have the Martells and the Tyrells, because naturally you have a house in charge of Dorne and the Marches border the Reach, and so yeah, there's tension. There are incursions and battles that have happened throughout history. Okay. Yeah, they hosted a tourney. And then the next interesting one was the Dance the Dragons. And again, this isn't too much of a spoiler. So if you haven't seen Hot D, maybe mute for a couple minutes, but like, it's not that much of a spoiler. It's just that Lord Tyrell during the Dance the Dragons is literally a baby. Like, that's it. He's an infant. And so as a result of that, a council rules over Highgarden and the Reach, that being the infant's mother, the infant's castellan, and the infant's steward, I believe. And they sort of, they form a little council and they declare to be neutral. They declare neutrality. They're like, we're not going to side with the Greens or the Blacks, we're just going to stay out of it. Which the Hightowers don't see as an issue because, they're the Hightowers. They're the second most powerful house in the Reach. If the most powerful house won't say anything, people are surely going to follow the second most powerful house in the Reach, right? I won't delve too much into what happens in the Reach, because again, House of the Dragon, but don't want to spoil it, but yeah. And then that infant Tyrell ends up growing up and serving King Daeron I, the young dragon, who of course conquers Dorne. He successfully conquers Dorne, and he places Lord Lionel Tyrell, all grown up, in charge, and he becomes the governor of Dorne. And he doesn't last very long, because he has a fondness for Dornish women, and who can blame him? And he has this little system where he pulls on a rope by his bed to summon another Dornish woman to come to his bedchamber. I'm not sure how that works. I don't know what the rope's connected to. Maybe like a bell or something. But they some Dornish assassins rig a trap, and he pulls the rope, and instead of getting a hot Dornish woman, he gets 1,000 scorpions falling onto his dick. So yeah, and he's presumably clawed and stung to death. And he's assassinated, and then his assassination leads to, uprisings, bloodshed, the control over Dorne sort of collapsing, which means that King Daeron goes back into Dorne to restore order, but ends up being slain. But other than so, that's sort of the biggest, the most influential Tyrell during Robert's Rebellion. During the Targ era that we know of outside of Mace Tyrell. It's this guy. But yeah, who knows? Maybe he'll be in House of the Dragon as a baby. But probably not. We'll hear about him. I don't think we'll see him. And then this could be a fun thing to talk about. Just having some water there. So yes. So this is a really fun theory. So the tourney of Ashford Meadow. So in one of the Duncan Egg stories, there's a tourney, and there's a different knights are mentioned, and people have associated those knights with. It says here certain individuals in the tourney correspond to the suitors of Sansa Stark. So let me just double check this. Ashford Meadow theory. Yeah, so 5 champions who end up defending Lady Ashford are Lionel Baratheon, Leo Tyrell, Tybalt Lannister, Humphrey Harding, and Prince Valar Targaryen. Now, initially, Sansa is betrothed to Joffrey Baratheon, so that links up with Lionel. Then, the next one is Tyrell. Sansa is planned to be wed to Willis Tyrell. That's a little Tyrell plot to help secure the north, but that falls through, and instead she's married to Tyrion Lannister, which links up with the 3rd champion, Tybalt Lannister. Now, the 4th champion at the tourney is Humphrey Harding, and Sansa and Littlefinger is plotting for Sansa to marry Harold Harding, known as Harry the Heir, because he's the heir to the Vale. Now, if this theory is correct and not just, coincidence, the 5th champion at Ashford Meadow is Prince Valar Targaryen, who is the son of Prince Baelor, Breakspear. Which would mean, if the theory is correct, that Sansa will marry a Targaryen. So the theory from then on sort of claims that potentially she will marry young Griff, Aegon VI, or perhaps Jon Snow. Not sure if I buy that. I don't really know if she's going to be married to anyone by the end of the series, but it is quite a cool idea. And so yeah, there is a Leo Tyrell who takes part in this tourney. What do you guys think? Do you believe in the Ashford Meadow theory? So essentially, each of the champions correspond to Sansa's marriage options, and so that means inevitably she will have to marry a Targaryen, be that Jon Snow or young Griff. How about I do a cheeky poll? That was fun last time when we were looking at all the Bolton theories, wasn't it? And then we were voting on which ones we believed in. Okay, so the poll will be: do you believe in the Ashford Meadow theory? So essentially, will Sansa marry a Targ? Because I don't see her marrying Jon personally, and maybe young Griff, but I just don't know if her story's going in that direction. Could be though. But yeah, the poll is out, so feel free to vote. Oh, there's a super chat. Thank you for the super chat from the one, the only Flippy Dippy Doo. Flippy Dippy Doo says Luthor was to marry a Targ like Olenna, but both betrothals fell through. I assume one of the main reasons they were wed. Almost an insult to Egg. Was Luthor was meant to marry a was he? Because I know Lady Olenna Redwine was meant to marry Aegon V's son Duncan, right? But then Duncan died, and so she ended up seducing Luthor Tyrell, Because she was like, well, if I'm not going to marry a prince, I can at the very least marry a Lord Paramount. Okay, yeah, so Luthor Tyrell was betrothed to Shaera Targaryen, who was Aegon V's daughter. But she ended up marrying Jaehaerys, her brother, because they fell in love, supposedly. Okay. So yeah, one of the main reasons they were wed, almost an insult to Egg. Yeah, we're told that, like I said, Olenna essentially seduced Luthor as a way for them to get married, so she could get some, get herself in a position of power. But it could almost be a kind of, hey, I was meant to marry Duncan and he got himself killed, or he refused, or I can't remember what it was. You're meant to marry whatever, but she's hooked up with her brother. Screw King Aegon for not being able to control his children. Screw the Targs. Let's marry each other. I can see that happening. Yeah. I don't think it's a coincidence. Okay. So yeah, Quinn didn't really talk about Luthor Tyrell in this section. But what we know of Luthor is that he was a bit of a well, at least Olenna says that he was a bit of an oaf. And the manner of his death kind of implies he may have been, in the fact that he was a keen hawker, and he had the best death in A Song of Ice and Fire history, which is he rode off a cliff while looking in the sky trying to hawk. I mean, that's just incredible. Oh, right, I'll end the poll. Oh, I can't end the poll. We're on 50-50. Ah, there we go. 39 votes are in. I think I'll end the poll now. So, that's very close. 51% of people with 39 votes said that they don't believe in the Ashford theory. 48% said yes. That's very high. So 48% think that she is going to end up marrying a Targ. Interesting. Oh, okay, so Daeron, Oh, I was saying Duncan, wasn't I? No, Olenna was betrothed to Daeron. Not Duncan. And then Daeron broke the betrothal. Okay, cool. Olenna killed Luthor. How did that happen? How? What did she do to that horse to make it run off a cliff?
Prelude to the modern story. Robert's Rebellion is a massive portion of the background of so many characters, including one Lord Mace Tyrell, who's the current Lord of Highgarden and subject to a video on my channel.
Does anyone else think Quinn kind of sounds like Kermit the Frog? Or is it just me? So yeah, Mace Tyrell sides with the Mad King during Robert's Rebellion. I don't know if it's ever stated why exactly he does, because obviously the Crown Lands have reason to side with the Mad King or Rhaegar if they like Rhaegar. The Martells, Elia Martell's married to Prince Rhaegar, and her and her kids are in King's Landing, so it's not just a power alliance, it's almost like a threat, right? So the Martells were like, we don't have a choice but to be with them. But the Reach? I don't know. Maybe Mace Tyrell was just hedging his bets and thought, okay, well, I'll start off with Mad King. And as I talk about in Quinn's Secret Genius theory video, he doesn't go and march up north and get his army killed. He wins a Battle of Ashford. Randall Tarley wins it, but Mace Tyrell is technically the guy in charge, and he takes all the credit because he's based. And then he goes on to siege Storm's End, where he doesn't have to fight. He can just sit and feast and get fat outside of Storm's End. And I saw a really interesting comment somewhere. It may have been on the A Song of Ice and Fire Reddit. I can't remember. But it's the idea of Renly siding with the Tyrells and declaring himself king, of him almost like abandoning Stannis, where he was a child during the siege of Storm's End. And, he would grow up with Stannis essentially being his father figure, because, their parents died in a shipwreck. So for a whole year, Stannis is acting as this stern, angry, unsociable father figure who's basically saying, no, you can't, we don't have enough to eat. You've got to eat the horses, you've got to eat the dogs and cats and rats and these onions. And meanwhile, every time Renly looks over the battlements, he sees Mace Tyrell and all the Tyrell banners and all the Reach banners, and they're deliberately hosting grand feasts as psychological warfare. So you could say that could have impacted Renly in a way that when he grew up, he sort of abandons this strict father figure, Stannis, and goes, no, I'm going to be the king, and I have the backing of this wealthy house they were the ones living in luxury, they were the ones eating great feasts while I suffered. I want to be on that side. I want to be with him. Maybe like subconsciously, that was playing on Renly's head. But yeah, if the Mad King had won the war, or if Rhaegar had won the war, maybe Mace just marches back and goes, well, I was loyal to you, so that's good. Or he gets given Storm's End because he besieged it. He's like, oh yeah, I want this. But then on the other hand, if Robert wins, which he does, he can just bank on being like, okay, I'm bending the knee to you. Goodbye. So sort of win-win situation for Mace.
Mace Tyrell is the Lord and a new Lord during Robert's Rebellion, and he chooses to remain loyal to Aerys II Targaryen. This is pretty extraordinary, as only two great houses remain loyal, being the Tyrells and the Martells. The Martells are tied to the Targaryens via marriage, but Mace seems to gain no benefit from remaining loyal to...
Yeah, okay. Then we move on to the Mace dynasty. So yeah, Luther Tyrell, I don't know when he died exactly, but obviously it was before Robert's Rebellion. Mace is the Lord during that time. And Mace is not particularly old. He's described as being a big fat man with a spade-shaped beard that's peppered with grey. But despite that, Cersei remarks on the fact that he's closer in age to her than her own father. So Tywin is meant to be in his late 50s, early 60s. And Mace Tyrell is closer in age to Cersei, so he's meant to be 40s. I think he's meant to be early 40s. But he looks older. But yeah.
When Luther Tyrell went flying off a cliff,
Rest in peace.
he left behind a son and heir. At the start of the main books.
But yeah, if you have any more questions and theories, send them in the form of super chats. Let's get some discussions going. Let me know, what do you guys think?
Series, Mace Tyrell is the Lord of Highgarden, Lord Paramount of the Mander, Defender of the Marches, High Marshal of the Reach, and Warden of the South.
I'm a sucker for the titles, man. I love the titles. I really do. I know Daenerys' ones are memed on, but I mean, listen to that stuff.
At the start of the main book series, Mace Tyrell is the Lord of Highgarden, Lord Paramount of the Mander, Defender of the Marches, High Marshal of the Reach, and Warden of the South.
So many titles. I mean, it just sounds cool. Also, interesting that he is not officially Lord Paramount of the Reach. The title is officially Lord Paramount of the Mander, which is really interesting. It's similar to the Riverlands, where the Tullys are not named the Lord Paramount of the Riverlands. They're called the Lord Paramount of the Trident, which is the major river flowing through the Riverlands, and likewise the Mander is a major river flowing through the Reach. So I do wonder why some places are Lord Paramount of the Stormlands, but then other places are Lord Paramount of the river that's flowing through this area. That's kind of weird. But he's Defender of the Reach. And he's Warden of the South. Because the idea of the Wardens exist as sort of military defences for potential enemies across the seas or across the border. So, for example, the North, the Starks are the Wardens of the North because they are the Wardens against the Wildling threat. The Vale are the Wardens of the East because they are the Wardens of any threats from Essos. The Lannisters, the Westerlands, are Wardens of the West because they're the bulwark against the Ironborn raids, and then the Reach are the Wardens of the South because they protect from the threat of Dornish raiders. Not that that's an issue now that Dorne is part of the Seven Kingdoms, but it's a hereditary title. But yeah, there's some sort of weird inconsistent titles in this stuff. Oh, thank you for the super chat from Lala Loopsy, who says, so what you're saying is that Luther Tyrell was last seen a horse? Hold on a second. You know what, I didn't consider it that way before. I didn't consider that before. He was technically last seen a horse, which means...
Start of the main book series.
Which means I desperately have to think of something funny relating to the horse meme. I can't, unfortunately. I'm sorry, it's been a busy week. The Tyrek horse meme is already in its death throes. There's nothing I can do to resuscitate it. It's a dead meme. You know, if I engage in the Tyrek horse joke while it's lying on the floor, all I'd be doing is beating a dead horse. Oh, hey! Huh? No? Okay, never mind.
Went flying off a cliff, he left behind a son and heir. At the start of the main book series, Mace Tyrell is the Lord of Highgarden, Lord Paramount of the Man.
Yeah, we've gone through this. This is an old Daenerys character I had from like early in the year. I had to revamp her because like that character model was back when I didn't give skin tones and the eyes were really small. So I was like, oh damn, I need to give her a better look.
Daenerys. Mace married Lady Allery Hightower, the daughter of Lord Leighton, and they had 4 children.
Yeah. So yeah, Mace Tyrell was married to Allery Hightower, she's not in it much. She's described as being, you know, a handsome woman with silver hair despite being in her 40s. And that description is one of the reasons why people think the Hightowers potentially look Valyrian, and I'm really not a fan of that. Genuinely, I'm not a fan of that. And I ranted about this on my CK3 video, my first one, called Exploring the World of CK3. And I talk about it for way too long, and looking back on it, it's kind of like, I'm like, why do I spend like 5 minutes talking about this? But basically, I'm not a fan of the idea that the Hightowers look Valyrian, because I feel like it would be more openly noted upon within the story. But also, just why? Why does every cool house have to like, oh, and they look Valyrian? Like, just, I don't know. I feel like, keep it specific. Yeah, keep the Valyrian look specific, otherwise it doesn't become special, you know. It's based on 3 factors. One is that Allery Hightower Allery Hightower does have silver hair despite being in her 40s, but that could just be, some people get silver hair when they're young, you know. I played with a D&D player who was from South America, right? So he came over to uni in this country, and he had he was like 20 or something. He had black hair, but he had a streak of silver through the hair, and it was completely natural and it looked badass. But some people's hair just, you know, gets silver when they're younger. And the other point is that Jorah Mormont married Lyonesse Hightower, and apparently she reminds him of Daenerys, and, you know, there's a creepy aspect there. But Catelyn describes Lyonesse as having golden hair, not silver Targaryen hair. So I don't think the point is that Lyonesse Hightower literally looks just like Daenerys and has Valyrian features. And then the final thing is Alicent. The idea that Alicent Hightower, partly one of the reasons she was married was because she has Valyrian features. And that's why her children have Valyrian features, even though we've established that those are dominant genes within Westeros. And the fact that old King Jaehaerys, while he was senile, dying, he mistook Alicent Hightower for his daughter. And so people go, therefore she must have Valyrian features. It's like, no, what that means is he's fucking senile. What it means is he's losing his mind and his memory, and he mistakes a young woman for being his daughter. And so people have taken these 3 things, Lyonesse supposedly looking like Daenerys, Allery having silver hair despite being in her 40s, and what was the other one? Oh yeah, and then Alicent Hightower being mistaken for a Targaryen by an old senile man. Somehow this is proof that the Hightowers have Valyrian features, even though all the visual descriptions of the Hightowers in the books, you know, World of Ice and Fire and Fire and Blood, you know, visual images approved by George R. R. Martin, they all show the Hightowers as having dark hair. And the show has them with sort of dark hair / red hair. So, personally, unnecessary tangent, but I'm not a fan of them having silver hair or Valyrian features. I just don't think it's necessary. And people are like taking 3 bits of info and then using it to, yeah. Not that anyone cares. This is that's my anal thing. Everyone has their own like annoying anal thing within the fandom that like no one else gives a shit about but them. That's my thing. That's my annoying thing that no one cares about. I don't like the High Towers being portrayed as Valyrian, and I don't like the idea that they look Valyrian. What do people think, by the way? Let me check the chat. You guys might like just flat out disagree with me. You might agree with me. I don't know. Yeah, official pre-Hot D art has that Alicent with dark hair. Old Town is pre-First Men. Yeah, they are ancient. And then there's a whole thing about the High Tower being built on fused stone, so maybe you could argue the old High Tower kings were like ancient Valyrians who travelled over. But I don't know, I don't know. But anyway, the moral of the story is that no one cares. Willis the heir, Sir Garland the gallant, Sir Loras the knight of flowers, and Lady Margaery the little... There we go. Okay, the crew. The children, half of whom weren't even in the show. They got Thanos snapped by D&D. They're turned into dust. I really like the Tyrell kids, and I can't wait to see them in the future. We have Willis, who's the sort of genteel, studious, crippled young man. I love all the little facts about him. The fact that he looked after his brother Garland by calling him Garland the Gallant, because he was a fat young boy and he didn't want people to call him like Garland the Fat or whatever, and so he went, I'm going to call you Garland the Gallant, now everyone's going to call you that. That's really cool. And then in a display of normative determinism, Garland the Gallant then becomes a gallant, brave, handsome knight and sheds the pounds, you know. And of course, the fact that he gets crippled by Oberyn, and instead of having some fierce rivalry, they're just mates. They just like talk about their passions via ravens. That's cool. And Littlefinger describes Willis as being boring when he's talking about her to Sansa. I think he's trying to console her after the marriage gets broken up, where he's like, he's boring, you know. He's boringly nice. You want someone dangerous and sexy like me. I mean, no, not me. I meant someone else. And then Garland is the typical brave knight, and it's not like a subversion. By all accounts, he is a nice, brave knight, and he's a nice person. He's an actual chivalrous person, and we see in, I think, Joffrey's wedding, he's standing up for Tyrion. So he turns to Tyrion, and people are singing about the Battle of the Blackwater, and they're singing about how Joffrey like led the charge and did all this shit, and it's just bullshit. And Tyrion's pissed off, and then Garland just turns to Tyrion and says, a good deed, or a great deed unsung is no less a great deed. He's like, just because the bards aren't singing about you doesn't mean you didn't do that thing. And he's complimenting Tyrion, and he's making Tyrion laugh. And when Joffrey pours wine over Tyrion, like he does in the show, Garland has the balls to be like, you know, that's fucked up, Joffrey. He doesn't say that. What's he say? He says that was not well made or something medievally. But he's basically like, that's uncalled for. And he says that to the king, and it's like, whoa. So he's a decent person. And they were cut out of the show, which is a shame. I feel like you could have at least merged them, you know? You don't need both, but maybe you can merge them so you can have, like, maybe just Sir Garland. You know, and he's just the older one who's the heir, and then that way you get to do Loras joining the Kingsguard and all that stuff. I don't know. Wow, Chad Summerchild himself is in the chat. The one and only. Yeah, Willis isn't married yet. It's almost like Mace is waiting for the right opportunity. He's like, hold on, not too early, because he, the initial plan is to marry Willis to Sansa, because then they think Bran and Rickon are dead. They presume Robb will be killed anyway when the war is over. That would make Sansa Lady of Winterfell. Therefore, Willis Tyrell will become Lord of the North. And he's the heir to Highgarden, so that'll make Willis, like, Lord of Highgarden and Winterfell, which is crazy. And then previously there was sort of, there's a little thing with Arianne and him, but it didn't go anywhere. But that would have been a good way of uniting the Martells and the Tyrells. And then Tywin actually offers for Cersei to marry him. After they've forged the alliance, Tywin's like, hey, Cersei, she's in her early 30s. She's still able to have kids. She's a beautiful woman. Why don't you marry her, secure the alliance? But Mace is like, okay, I don't want to risk him marrying an older woman when he can marry a younger woman and have more kids. And also, we already have an alliance because Marjorie's marrying Joffrey and then Tommen. We don't need another one. We have one. So, Willis is being kept as a bachelor because I think Mace is waiting for the right opportunity, / Olenna is. I hope that comes into play. It would be cool to have Willis actually marry someone and that to actually affect the plot in a major way. Like, in terms of an alliance of some sort. Yeah. But then we have Loras, who's a really cool character, sort of the famous sort of the celebrity of the family, essentially. He's just a famous, handsome tourney knight that everyone loves. And then Marjorie, of course, who's also super popular and pretty, and they are the perfect fairy tale family. Yeah, in fact, you know what? I'm going to do a little... Polls are always fun. Let me do another cheeky poll. So I'm going to be like, who is your favourite Tyrell child? Of all the Mace Tyrell's kids, who's your favourite? Is it Willis, Garland, Loras, or Marjorie? The poll is up in the chat. Feel free to jump on that. Let me know the votes are streaming in. Okay, go ahead and vote. I'm really interested to see what people's favourite Tyrell will be. Southern ambitions. Okay, I don't know enough. I don't remember enough about the Southern ambitions theory. There are so many conspiracy theories. There's the Grand Maester conspiracy. There's the Grand Northern conspiracy. There's the Southern ambitions. There's so much going on. I can't even remember what the Southern ambitions one is. There's the Great Dornish conspiracy, or the Dornish master plan, or whatever. Okay, 39 votes are in, and Garland is winning by a landslide, really. Let's see if that changes, though. So, get some more people in, get more people voting, and while we're voting on that, let me continue the video. Little Rose. Willis is a studious man and keen hawker, but not a knight. When he was just a squire, Mace pushed him into competing in a tournament. And the whole reason he got crippled is because Mace was like, I want you to be a great tourney knight, go and compete even though you're a teenager. Clearly Mace has the same understanding of ages as George R. R. Martin does. Oh, you're a teenage squire, go and joust. Oh no, you broke your leg, how did this happen? That is a point towards the camp who say that Mace Tyrell is an idiot, because that's a pretty dumb thing to do. Resulting in Oberyn Martell of Dorne crippling one of his legs. Mace was furious, but Willis forgave Oberyn, and they began a friendly correspondence. Now, yeah, that's cool. I like that. I like that they're just mates. Willis could have been more than friendly with Oberyn's niece, Princess Arianne Martell, who desired to marry him. But unfortunately, her father refused to let them meet, and Willis remains Westeros' most eligible bachelor. So Doran had plans, long-laid plans, and he wanted Arianne Martell to marry Viserys Targaryen, but that didn't work out. But because of that, he didn't allow Arianne to marry who she wanted. Instead, he would deliberately betroth her to older men, knowing that she would resist and break the betrothal. Because if he didn't betroth her to anyone, people would get suspicious, I guess. So, excuse me. So he betrothed her to, Eldon Estamont, who she's like, ooh, no, he's old and gross. She betrothed him to Walder Frey. Obviously, she's like, no, fuck off. And he deliberately does this, as I said, so that she remains open, but there's no suspicion there. He can just write her off as an unruly daughter. Which makes sense, because, daughters are given more respect in Dorne and so on. But Arianne, apparently, interested in Willis Tyrell, the heir to Highgarden. That would be a nice place to live. So she, I think she actually, sneaks out and tries to travel to Highgarden with an entourage. unbeknownst to her father, so that she can meet Willis Tyrell and basically be like, hey, we should marry. Because her father kept denying it. But her father got wind of it and then sent Oberyn to basically catch her and send her back and be like, no, you're not going to marry him. So in a world where Doran wasn't so obsessed with his long-term Targaryen restoration plan, maybe we could have seen Arianne and Willis marrying, and we could have had a Tyrell Martell heir in Highgarden. That'd be pretty cool. That'd be pretty sexy, to be honest. Alright, I think we should finish the poll. We have 47 votes in, and 45% of people say Garland Tyrell is the most favourite Tyrell child. Okay, let me end the poll now. Only been 4 minutes, but I don't necessarily want the poll always clogging the chat for people who don't want to vote. So 43% say Garland, 27% say Marjorie, 20% say Willis, only 8% say Loras. I guess of all of them, Loras is presented as being the most flawed. But to be fair, the Arianne character design is a little weird. Yes, her design is weird. It's because she's one of my early design characters. A lot of the time from my older videos, because I have her in my Patreon exclusive House Dane video, which is several years old. Several months old, sorry. And so instead of making them from scratch, I take the older designs and I revamp them slightly. But it means that there's a bit of a disconnect between what my current designs are and what my old designs are. So, like, I will admit her design is kind of weird. It doesn't, yeah, I might redo her. It doesn't quite fit her. I think it's the chin. It doesn't really suit her. But yeah, I think it's because Loras is presented as being the most flawed. So Willis, all we know is that he's a good person and looks after his family. Garland, we see him in action being kind and we hear about him being gallant. Marjorie, we barely see Marjorie in the books. People's perception of Marjorie is so warped by the show. Where it's like Natalie Dormer and she's being like really intelligent and cunning and sexy and everyone loves Marjorie. But in the book, she's barely in it. And we don't actually know how cunning she is. We don't know how involved she is in plotting. That could just be a show invention. We don't know enough about her. Whereas Loras, we know the most about Loras, and we see him in we see all the good and all the bad. So yeah, he's a brave guy. He's a good fighter. He's, he's got love and respect for for Renly Baratheon, and that quote I included, which is a good line from the books. The whole "once the sun has set, no candle can replace it." Where Loras just decides outright, Renly was my only love. I don't want to marry anyway. I don't want another lover. I'm just going to be a member of the Kingsguard and commit myself to defending the crown and being a noble warrior and so on. But at the same time, Loras is a little bit arrogant. He's very strong. He's strong-willed. He's in his late teens, so he has got that kind of teen angst going on. He's a little bit edgy, and he's hot-tempered and so on. But also, I think people's perception of Loras is also influenced by the show, because in the show he is just kind of like a whiny bitch, and then he doesn't do anything. Like, he doesn't join the Kingsguard, and they don't keep the whole idea of him being in love with being in love with Renly and moving on. They sort of just have him like sleeping with squires and stuff, which is fine, but it's just kind of like not as interesting as the way his character goes in the books. And then he just gets arrested and does nothing for a season and blows up. And before getting blown up, he gets a fucking star carved into his head, then he's blown up. So he's tortured and then blown up, and it's like, what is the point of your character? They didn't know what to do with you. They didn't put you on the Kingsguard because they didn't give you any older siblings, and so you just sat around being married to Cersei. Or no, being betrothed to Cersei. Just, yeah. Show Loras isn't handsome enough? No, Show Loras is handsome. Show Loras was handsome for me. I don't know, what do you think? Let me know in the chat. Ladies? Men? Did you find Show Loras to be a good looking chap? I mean, obviously the characters in the books are always described as being like overwhelmingly good looking, and you can't really do that in the show, right? Like, lots of characters in the show are not as attractive as they're described in the books, but likewise, lots of characters in the show are way more attractive than they are in the books, like Tyrion and so on. But yeah, I think people's perception of Loras is warped by him being in the show, just being annoying, and being a gay stereotype. Like Loras and Renly in the show, okay, I'll go into it later. When we can delve into Loras and Renly a bit later.
Little Garland Tyrell was nicknamed Garland the Gallant by his older brother to prevent any nasty epithets from...
There we go.
Is perhaps the most famous of the Tyrell lads. Half the girls want to bed him, all the men want to be him.
That's a line from the books. I don't know who speaks it, but it's
him, all the men...
Yeah, half the girls want to bed him, all the men want to be him. As you probably noticed, I included a fun little bit where he's kind of... There's an admiring lady and he's like, what do you want? And then there's an admiring man, he's like, hello. And then he squires for Renly.
For Lord Renly Baratheon.
Renly is thick. I made him way too thick. His character, I gave him the, like... I have a certain character model template, which is, like, wide, that I used for Robert Baratheon. And I gave it to Renly, but he's just a wide boy. I might have to sort out his proportions. But let's talk a bit about Renly and Loras. What are people saying in the chat? Show Loras is sexy, show Loras is handsome, show Loras is good looking, show Loras is pretty. I'd want to bed him. Okay, see, it looks like the overwhelming consensus that people like show Loras. I thought show Lancel was very attractive in season 1. I thought Twink Lancel was pretty good looking. But then he becomes like a buff, skinhead Faith of the Seven guy. I was like, oh, what happened to you? Okay, yeah. So let's dive into this. So first off, what I didn't like in the show is how the characters were reduced into being gay stereotypes. So, as I said, Loras is kind of whiny, and he just kind of... His only character trait seems to be he sleeps with men, so that HBO can have a quota of gay sex, so they can be like, look, we have gay sex as well as straight sex in our show. And then Renly, this big, strong, powerful, masculine warrior. In the show, he's transformed into like a bit of like a wimpy little dude, basically. Like a wimpy guy who, when Loras shaves him and cuts him, he goes, oh, I'm bleeding. And it's like, really? Really? What, because he's gay? He's like... He's all shocked and hurt that, oh, I've been cut and I'm bleeding, oh no. And it's all... and like, in the tournament, in season 1, where he's like giving Loras a look, and as the audience, you're meant to infer, oh, there's a relationship between them because they're giving each other looks. But the look Renly gives him is such like a sort of stereotypically like camp, like, hello, look. And it's just like, why do people find it difficult to portray gay men as masculine, you know, in media? It's so strange. Like, yeah, I don't want to delve too much into it, but it's like, if you're going to include a gay character, it always has to be make them effeminate, make them feminine, make them camp. It's almost like you can't possibly have a gay man who's also masculine. And it's like, no, Renly and Loras are both masculine men, you know. They are stereotypically, traditionally masculine men, because that's the society it is, but they're also gay lovers, you know? That doesn't contradict anything. That doesn't contradict itself. I mean, let's be honest. Obviously, Renly is on top and Loras is on the bottom. You know, there's no debate there. We can infer that easily. Yeah. But another thing I wanted to mention, and some people have referenced this in the chat, is that their relationship is a bit strange in the books, and I don't think it's deliberate. I think it's another case of George either not really understanding ages or just being a bit weird, in the sense of lots of relationships and scenes of a certain nature with female characters are underage, because why not? But there's a similar thing here where, so Renly is in his early 20s, and Loras in the first book is 16, and he's squired for Renly since he was a teenager, and we know by the first book they are lovers, so the implication does seem to me that a man in his early 20s basically groomed like a teenage boy, which is kind of weird. And again, a lot of that stuff does happen in the books, usually with underage girls, because it's Westeros and it has to be dark and edgy and or whatever. But it is interesting that we don't talk about that, isn't it? That everyone gives Rhaegar shit. Everyone gives Rhaegar shit. They're like, hold on, you're like a married man, you're in your mid-20s and you're running off with a 16-year-old northern girl. That's creepy as hell. And some people say, oh no, it's not creepy, it's just that George doesn't quite get ages and that's not the intention. Other people say, no, that is the intention. It's a subversion. And then some people say, it's not the intention, but it's also not a subversion, it's just George not quite understanding. I don't know, but you know, it's not quite the same, but it's still another instance of a young man and a teenager. And it's like, there is clearly a power imbalance here. But I don't think anything like that will ever be addressed in the books as, you know, in a meaningful way. I think it's just kind of... Renly... Flippy Dippy Doo says Renly is a bratty power bottom. We've all got our own interpretations, I guess. Yeah, I'm glad we all agree that Renly is a top. Most people in medieval times died around 40. Did they, though? Like, don't get me wrong, I understand that things were different in medieval times, and absolutely people who were younger matured faster, and people who were younger were getting up to stuff that doesn't happen nowadays. Like, I get that. It's just... Yeah. It's presented most of the time in a neutral way as opposed to a negative way, and I don't know, maybe some people take issue with that. Yeah, I don't think it's intentional. I think there are just as someone in the chat has said, there are many unfortunate implications with the ages George does, but I don't think it's intentional, and I don't think it's ever going to be addressed in a meaningful way. But yeah, also the whole most people in medieval times died 40 years, that's not true. That's based on averages, but those averages are distorted by extremely high extremely high infant mortality rates. So lots and lots of infants died, but once they got through infancy, they were way more likely to survive. But it means that if you have lots and lots of people dying when they're really young, the average goes down extremely low, and so then you have people saying the average age was 30 or 40. It's like, no, people lived to, like, you know, not as long as they do nowadays, but people did live to their 60s and their 70s and their 80s. Yeah. It was mostly if you were an infant or a child that, you know, that was the riskiest era. Oh, there's a line in Hot D that I didn't pick up on in the first watch. Maybe not even in the first two watches. Where Hobart Hightower is talking to Otto and he says, the boy is out of his infancy, he's now 2 years old. Now is the time where we need to start pushing him to be Viserys' heir. And some people watching the show criticised it, saying, hold on, why is there a 2-year time skip and only now is Otto pushing? And the idea was, in the first 2 years, it's risky, he could die, so don't wait until he's made it past that, and then okay, he's out of the woods, let's start pushing that stuff. Yeah, the age thing, someone saying a myth pushed by Victorian/Edwardian historians. A lot of pop culture perception of medieval times is stuff that they're like hold over quote unquote facts from Victorian times, where the Victorians, in their prudish nature, liked to present medieval times as being sort of darker, more miserable, and more prudish than it actually was, you know. And even stuff like medieval historians literally, like Victorian scholars and so on, like scraping the paint off of armour and statues and presenting them in museums. Like, Knight's armor used to be painted. You don't see that in movies. You see armor that's just like steel grey or whatever. But like, yeah, castles were painted, armor was painted, statues were painted, right? So those old Roman statues, they weren't white, they were painted. Anyway,
at Storm's End, earning his knighthood at 15, and made a name
talk about a tangent, my goodness.
for himself, defeating Sir Hostine Frey and Sir Jaime Lannister.
Oh, cheeky little Walder Frey cameo. And a little Hostine Frey cameo. Let's see if we can get this boy in slow motion.
And made a name for himself, defeating
Oh, that's the opposite of slow motion. I don't know why I... Nope, that's subtitles. What did that say? Oh. I thought that said Russian. It said English audio. Yeah, I do. By the way, in all my animated videos, I do my own captions before I release, because auto captions suck. So I always like do them myself, so that if people need them for whatever reason, you have hearing issues, or you want to watch in public, you can actually understand the narration. It's not just like a bunch of bullshit.
Storm's End, earning his knighthood at 15.
Yeah.
For himself.
Oh, where is he?
Jaime
Where is he? There's Jaime.
Lannister on Prince Joffrey.
No, show us Hostine. Show us Hostine.
And made a name for himself, defeating Sir
Oh, it's Hostine Frey. Who cares? Okay. Shout out to every Frey explained. Shall I put the auto-generated subtitles on?
Hostine Frey and Sir Jaime Lannister on Prince Joffrey's 12th name day. At some point, Loras became Renly's lover.
It's not terrible. It's not the worst thing ever.
Something of an open secret among the nobility.
See? Something of an open secret among the nobility. Okay.
Finally, of course, there's the sweet and popular Lady Marjorie. Of course.
You know what? These auto-generated captions, they're not too bad. They're still not a good idea, because if you're doing fantasy, there's going to be a whole bunch of ridiculous words.
Of course, there are other Tyrells beyond the main branch. Mace's sisters are Mina and Janna.
You know what? I didn't realise how good the auto-generated stuff was. That was actually way better than I thought it would be. Maybe I shouldn't be wasting my time on. Polish subtitles when? When I hire you to be my translator, Boomler.
Latter of whom is married to Lord Paxter Redwine of the Arbor.
Yes, so Mace Tyrell has two sisters. Janna and Mina. Wait, who's who again? Let me...
Main branch. Mace's sisters are Mina and Janna.
There we go, Mina and Janna. So Mina is... Wait, let me double check this. Wait, yeah.
The latter of whom is married to Lord Paxter.
Yes, so Mina is married to, I believe, Sir John Fossaway. From House Fossaway. They are the Red Apples. The Red Apple people. Let me just double check that. Okay, no, Mina Tyrell is married to Paxter Redwine, who's the Lord of the Arbor, and Janna Tyrell is married to, yeah, so I think when I said latter, I got it mixed up. I should have said former. There we go. She's married to Paxter, and she is married to John Fossaway. I don't think we ever meet John Fossaway, I'm not sure. But Janna is, but Paxter Redwine is the head of the Redwine fleet, and he's off to deal with the Ironborn as of the end of the latest book, and he's also been named Lord Admiral and Master of Ships by the Regent Kevin Lannister. So he's a powerful man, and he's a vassal of Mace Tyrell, and he's Mace Tyrell's brother-in-law. So talk about it more at the end of the video, but it goes to show how the Tyrells continue to accumulate power in King's Landing. And Janna Tyrell is described as being buxom, so I thought I would be book accurate with my art.
Paxter Redwine of the Arbor. Their uncle Gorman is a maester of the Citadel, who has recently taken over Archmaester Walgrave's.
There we go. So, big Tyrell family. Maybe I should do every Tyrell explained, I don't know. So basically what we have is Mace's father, Luthor, obviously dead, but Luthor had 3 brothers. One was Gorman, who's a maester of the Citadel, and during the course of the book series, Archmaester Walgrave, who is the master of Ravencraft, or Ravenry, essentially lost his wits. He's become senile, and so Maester Gorman takes over his position. I don't think he's actually the Archmaester. I don't think he's technically the Archmaester. I think he's just taking up his position as Archmaester because, basically until Walgrave dies. But it's interesting because I don't know what the rule is, but I think it's that if you're an Archmaester, it means that you are the head of a certain craft within the Citadel. So there are different schools of learning, and each learning is associated with a certain metal, which then is part of the chain that you wear around your neck. So I think black iron is the metal that's associated with Ravencraft. So once you master Ravencraft, you would get a black Ravencraft chain link, and the Archmaester of Ravencraft gets because all the Archmaesters get rods and masks, so this guy gets a black iron rod and a black iron mask, which unfortunately, according to my patrons, who I showed this character design to, informed me that it looked like a gimp mask, but that's oh well, that's just the way it is. Like an eyes wide shut, motherfuckers. But yes, I think that if you're an Archmaester, you cannot become a Grand Maester, because the Conclave of Maesters choose the next choose the next Grand Maester to send to King's Landing to sit on a small council. I think you can't do that if you're an Archmaester, because you already have duties. So I think Maester Gorman, he's not technically an Archmaester, he's just taking up the position. He's taking up the duties of another Archmaester who's unfit for the office. Is like a loophole to allow Gorman to become the Grand Maester. And we'll talk about that more at the end, in terms of the Tyrells accumulating power, but I think that could be a loophole so that we get Grand Maester Gorman in the next book, potentially. Duties as the head of Ravencraft. Their uncle Garth, known as Garth the Gross for his flatulence. Shout out to Garth the Gross. Can I just say, this is the single worst piece of lore in A Song of Ice and Fire, bar none. The worst lore. Mace Tyrell has an uncle who farts a lot called Garth the Gross. I mean, come on. That's... Why? Why? Why does it exist? Just why? So yeah, Garth the Gross is the Lord Seneschal of Highgarden. Serves as the Lord Seneschal of Highgarden, and their uncle Morin is the Lord Commander of the City Watch of Old Town. Morin is the only one with legitimate children. His second... Yeah, so the only one with legitimate children. Gorman doesn't have any kids. Garth the Gross has 2 bastard kids. And children. His second... Gorman... This is kind of confusing. So Gorman has a son, and that son has children, and those children have children. So Morin Tyrell has great-grandchildren, I think, or at the very least a great-grandchild, and yet at the same time his second son is like a young man. So it's like, how the fuck does that work? But presumably he married a second time, and then his second wife gave him another son, I guess. Oh yeah, someone in the chat earlier asks, when is the next Every House Explained? Hopefully next, either the Friday coming up or the Friday after, I'll be doing every single Reach House explained, which feels like a good way to move on from the history of House Tyrell to then talk about the Reach. Yeah, there are lots of Tyrells. I didn't even go through them all. I went through the ones that I thought were like mildly interesting. But there are more. There are 3 Tyrells that are Marjorie's handmaidens. There are all kinds of cousins and second cousins, twice removed, and all this stuff. A fart ruined the betrothal of a Martell to a High Tower. That's true. Baelor Brightsmile potentially could have been betrothed to, I believe, Elia Martell. But he farted in front of her by accident, and then Oberyn nicknamed him Baelor Breakwind. And since then, Elia couldn't take him seriously, and then they never got married. Which means she never married Rhaegar, which means Rhaegar never broke away from her to kidnap Lyanna Stark and marry her and cause Robert's Rebellion. So basically, if Baelor Brightsmile, Baelor Hightower, had not farted, Robert's Rebellion wouldn't have happened. That's all it goes back to. Yeah, I gave him like a little emo hair thing, because he's described as basically just being like a young, lazy fuckboy who's like, he's like that douchebag in college who like is still there after 5 years. He's just retaking new subjects because he's using his daddy's money, using daddy's money to like keep taking subjects and stay in the uni lifestyle. And he's like 25 and everyone else is 18, and they're like, "Why are you here?" And he's just wants to go clubbing, and you know. And he's also a shitbag because we meet Lazy. He's called Lazy Leo Tyrell, and we meet him in the prologue, and we also see him from Sam's perspective. And during that time, he's just being rude, being creepy about women, and being racist to Alaras, who is black. So he's just a dick. Yeah, I don't know what role he'll play in the future, but you know, if the Ironborn are attacking Old Town, maybe he's going to get his just desserts.
Son Leo Tyrell is an arrogant, lazy, and downright racist novice at the Citadel. He's that one edgy college student we all knew. During the Hands tournament of 298, Sir Loras Tyrell jousts his way to the final round, facing off against Sir Gregor Clegane. The Mountain almost murders Loras in his fury, but he's rescued by the Hound.
That whole section, that entire this. So like him coming in and then jousting and all that stuff. This takes way longer than you think it would. Like, it's not that impressive visually, like there's not loads going on, but this just takes like a whole hour. See, I wish I could post like every day or once a week or something. Sometimes I do once a week, sometimes I do once a fortnight, but yeah. While I'm growing this channel in its early stages, basically my life is just dedicated to this channel. Like, this whole year has been me grinding to get to the point where my channel is big enough where I can like take a break and I don't have to, because I'm basically working 6 days a week, animating, not going outside because I don't have the money to do it, to really do anything outside. So I've just been working all year until I get to the point where my YouTube channel is in a comfortable position where I can officially call myself a professional YouTuber, and I can maybe hire an editor to help me out and start producing more regular content, but also taking more breaks at the same time, you know. And hey, it's going well. Like I said, we're just over a week away from the year anniversary of Fantasy Haven. Excuse me. Excuse me again. 1 year anniversary, and we're already on 18k subs, so it's pretty good. And I wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. You are all the best, you guys and girls. You are amazing. Okay. Okay, I went on a tangent again. It's smooth animation? Yeah, sometimes the animation is smooth. That's always... I gotta work extra hard to get it smooth. My favourite bit of animation is in the Rains of Castamere one, where it's the Rain siblings like dancing side to side. That always cracks me up.
Throne, Renly and Loras flee to Highgarden, where Renly is crowned Lord of the Seven Kingdoms. Margaery becomes Renly's wife, Loras becomes the Lord Commander of the Rainbow Guard, and Mace becomes Lord Hand.
See, this is something I forgot. Like, I remembered obviously Margaery and Renly are betrothed. Loras becomes Commander of the Rainbow Guard. I forgot that Mace becomes Hand of the King to Renly. But yeah, that makes sense. Also, by the way, let's talk about the Rainbow Guard. So,
Mace becomes...
This is quite funny. So, I'm glad they didn't do this in the show, because it would have come across as very goofy. But Renly having his own Kingsguard, where each of them are named after different colours of the rainbow, and their cloaks are the colours of the rainbow, isn't a gay reference. It's not meant to be like a reference to the rainbow flag, the pride flag. It's just... George R. R. Martin just said, Renly likes bright colours, which is probably associated with him being gay anyway, right? But he likes bright colours. He likes rainbows. The Rainbow Guard, they're colourful and cool looking. And he didn't realise that he didn't realise what the gay flag was. But can you imagine in 2011 or 2012, Season 2 comes out, the gay king has a personal guard and they're all wearing rainbow cloaks. Like, that would have been ridiculous. So I am glad they changed that. Like, just meta. The meta aspect there could have made that a bit silly. But the idea of a rainbow guard does slap, doesn't it? Like, Sir Aemon the yellow, Sir Robar the red, Brienne the blue. It's just kind of cool, isn't it?
Lord Hand, leading most of the Reach behind their new king. Renly and Loras slowly march on King's Landing with a huge host, while Mace Tyrell deprives the city of food and resources by closing off the Rose Road.
Yeah, shout out to Mace Tyrell closing off the Rose Road. The road through which the Reach, the fertile breadbasket of Westeros, and King's Landing trade, closing it off and sparking a famine in King's Landing. I kind of forget he does that stuff as well. Like that's brutal. Everyone talks about Mace Tyrell being this oaf, but the man forcefully blocks food from going to King's Landing to cause a famine, and he does cause a famine, which creates riots and uprisings and anger and tension. It's like, holy shit, that's kind of brutal. That's brutal, you know?
The city of food and resources by closing off the Rose Road, sparking a famine. What should be an easy victory is thwarted when a mysterious shadow assassinates King Renly. Although,
okay, this section might be one of my best little clips of animation, actually.
Sparking a famine. What should be an easy victory is thwarted when a mysterious shadow assassinates King Renly. Although everyone blames Brienne of Tarth.
That came together so satisfyingly. I like that. That shadow looks suspiciously like Stannis Baratheon wearing a golden
shadow
crown.
Assassinates King Renly.
See, do you ever reread parts of the books and you realise that the way you read it the first time is just completely... The way you interpret it is completely wrong to what happened. So, for example, when I was reading The Red Wedding for the first time and I was, like, speed reading it because, you know, my heart was going fast and I was like, oh my god. For some reason, I misread that Ironborn had come into the hall and I thought there was some weird Frey-Ironborn alliance. And it was just people in iron armour, but I somehow read it as Ironborn. And then when I went back and read it a second time, they didn't mention Ironborn. I was like, wait, what? And it turns out I just misread that the Ironborn were involved in the Red Wedding. And similarly, for some reason, my memory of Renly's death is him being naked, lying in a bathtub, and having his throat slit by the shadow. But that's not what happens at all. What happens is he takes his armour off, he takes his gorget off, and then his throat gets slashed. But he's not naked. In my head, he's naked in a bathtub, and then I reread it, and it was different. And I was like, why is that what I interpreted in my head? Why did I interpret him being naked in a bathtub? Oh no, I'll tell you why. No, I literally just remembered why. I read the scene of Renly's death when I was in a bathtub. That's it. I was on holiday, and I was in a bathtub, and I was reading A Clash of Kings, and I read the bit where Renly dies, and when he took his armour off, and then retroactively thinking about that scene, I think I created the image of Renly being in a bathtub and being killed. Oh my god, that's where I got it from. So dumb. Okay, anyway.
Renly. Although everyone blames Brienne of Tarth, Littlefinger seizes the opportunity to turn the tide, first speaking with the grieving Loras at Bitterbridge, and then riding to Highgarden to negotiate with Mace and his mother.
Yes, so Littlefinger talks with Loras first, and then he goes to Highgarden, because Mace is staying at Highgarden. And a point is made that he negotiates with Mace and Olenna, because I think if Olenna is the true smarty, is the true mastermind of the Reach, then Olenna is the one who is pulling the strings, and, you know, is like, yes, that's a good deal, Mace, we should go for that one. I'm not sure, Mace, maybe we should ask for a marriage, you know, sort of whispering in his ear beside. And for securing this Tyrell Baratheon Lannister alliance, Littlefinger is rewarded by being named Lord Paramount of the Trident and the Lord of Harrenhal. Thank you for the super chat from Cyrello, who asks, do you think Willis Tyrell will be involved in the story in the future? If so, how? Definitely. He definitely will be involved, and we know that from George R. R. Martin, because he was disappointed that Willis and Garland were not in the show, and he pushed for them to be in a show because he said they do important things in the future. You can't cut them. Mention them off screen, but like bring them in for later. But they were just cut, so they must play a role. I do wonder what that role could be, because I don't know if the Tyrells will side with young Griff. I think they will be overthrown by young Griff, and I think their power will collapse. I think the Lannisters and the Tyrells basically go down together. As of now, obviously Willis and Garland are focusing on the Ironborn attack. Garland is at risk of death in terms of him actually trying to build up a fleet to attack the Shield Islands and take them back. And you could see, the darkness of the later books. You could see it would be very narratively satisfying, if sad, for a brave, chivalrous, genuinely good person like Garland to be slain by Euron, right, in the Ironborn. So I think Garland's sort of doomed to die. Willis, though, he's currently in Highgarden. I'm not sure. But maybe a marriage alliance. Maybe some form of marriage pact. I don't know. Maybe we're being led to believe that Ariane Martell will marry young Griff, but he won't. Maybe Sansa will. And maybe the Tyrells... Maybe Mace will die, but then the Tyrells join young Griff, and Ariane actually marries Willis. Who knows? Oh, there's a very good video by Admiral Kurd called The Lost POV about the Tyrells, where his theory, and it's probably taken from some other theories, but his theory is that the original plan for Feast for Crows was that the new POV was going to be from the Tyrell perspective. So it could have been Willis Tyrell or Garland Tyrell or whatever, probably Willis. Or someone at Highgarden. And that we were going to meet the Tyrells, and that would be the next great house that we don't have a POV from. But instead he decided to go for Dorne. But yeah, because there are certain aspects of the Reach that there are intriguing details that haven't been properly expanded, and it's sort of like, like Lord Leighton hasn't descended the High Tower in a decade, and the Mad Maid lives there looking at spells, and all this stuff is like, what is this? Is this just random background lore, or is it plans for a story that never happened because the focus was brought down to Dawn, or I don't know. What are people saying? Meeting Willis in a Sam POV, that seems very likely, actually. Why are people roasting me for reading a book in a bathtub? I don't know why I did that. I do acknowledge that's a weird thing to do. Yeah. Okay. The infamous Queen of Thorns, sharp of tongue and wit, and potentially the true mastermind of the Reach. Thus, the Baratheon-Lannister-Tyrell alliance is forged. Sir Garland and Sir Loras lead their host to meet the Lords Tywin Lannister, Mathis Rowan, and Randall Tarley. Together... So yes, here I was being a little bit lazy. And I was running out of time. I decided not to animate a section of, the Battle of Blackwater with, the characters like the Tyrells coming in and saving the day. But I did have a little nod to it in the sense of, I don't bring it up as a narrator, but here we have Loras in the Renly armour that I showed earlier. Because, sorry, not Loras, Garland. Because Garland wears Renly's armour to invoke fear in Stannis' army, where they go, oh, Renly's ghost, he's not actually dead, he's risen up, and sort of create panic. And Loras initially wants to wear it, but it didn't fit him, so Garland wears it instead. Although in the show, Garland doesn't exist, so Loras wears the green armour. Although, Their host to meet the Lords Tywin Lannister, Mathis Rowan, and Randall Tarley. Together they march on to King's Landing, defeating Stannis' army and saving the city. The promises are kept. So Garland is granted the lordship of Brightwater. Yes, Garland is granted Brightwater Keep. He's made Lord of Brightwater Keep. House Florent own that house, but they initially side with Renly, but then they side with Stannis because they realise, okay, hold on, Stannis has an army. The Lannisters are tied up in the north. Stannis has a chance of taking King's Landing potentially, and Lord Florent's niece Selyse is married to Stannis, which means they have that tie. And potentially, if Stannis had one, he would have named the Florents as the Lords Paramount of the Reach and would have given them Highgarden. But it does mean that the Florents are stripped of their land officially, and they say, Garland, you can have Brightwater Keep. And so a Florent currently owns Brightwater Keep in terms of there's a Florent who's the Castellan of Brightwater Keep. They're in charge. But on paper, it belongs to Garland. But by the end of the last book, he's currently sieging it to try and get it back, but then he breaks off the siege to deal with the Ironborn. So, Water Keep from the treasonous House Florent. Lady Margaery is betrothed to King Joffrey Baratheon, and Sir Loras, mourning his dead lover, is accepted to the King's Guard. Oh, Boomler says, I can't believe you didn't mention left and right. Oh, I forgot about left and right. I think I drew left and right. I did. I drew left and right. I completely forgot to include them. Oh, that's annoying. In fact, I don't talk enough about Olenna in this video for some reason. Like, she's a major part of the Tyrells. I know she's a red wine technically, but yeah, I don't really dive into her enough. She has, for those who don't know, Olenna Tyrell has two bodyguards, twin bodyguards. Get this, they're called Eric and Arik, like the Kingsguard. Why would you name your twin sons after the famous Kingsguard twins who fought on different sides of a war, you know? You're asking for trouble. You're begging for sibling rivalry at this point. But anyway, Olenna Tyrell has these twin bodyguards, and she can't tell them apart, so she just calls them left and right and tells them to stay on the left or right of her. So they're just these like buff bodyguards left and right. It's pretty fun. I completely forgot to include them in the video, and I drew them, which is even more annoying. But there we go. Yes. So Garland has Brightwater Keep, and he gets that with his wife, who's Lynette Fossaway. And another thing that's cute is that Garland and his wife seem to actually like each other. From what I remember, they give each other loving looks, and you know, they get on. Keep from the treasonous House Florent. Lady Margaery is betrothed to King Joffrey Baratheon, and Sir Loras, mourning his dead lover, is accepted to the King's Guard. After all, when the sun has set, no candle can replace it. Rest in peace to a real one. Tywin additionally offers to wed his widowed daughter Cersei to Willis Tyrell, but Mace refuses. The eligible bachelor remains a bachelor. The Tyrells are quick to cement their power. Wagons of food are sent to the wagons of food that suspiciously look very empty. Starving population of King's Landing. Mace Tyrell is named master. Yes, so Mace Tyrell becomes master of ships. I don't know why he's master of ships. What experience does he have with ships? I don't know. It's basically just a sort of, you know, it's just a bribery position. No, it's just like a kind of minister that portfolio, but we are going to give you a title. But you know, yeah, come on a small council. Who are we missing? Master of ships. You can be master of ships. And then there's Pycelle, Grand Maester. And then there's Tyrion, who's master of coin at this point. I tell you what, I looked into this because I try and base all of my art on the book descriptions as closely as I can. So like even the clothing descriptions. So I looked up what Cersei wears, and I found out that Cersei never actually wears red in the books. Like maybe once, but fan art also always associates her with red, but she doesn't wear it in the book. She wears green to match her eyes. So, you know. And likewise, I looked into Pycelle, and I kind of assumed that he wore like, you know, the grey-brown robes that he does in the show. But he doesn't. He doesn't wear the grey mace uniform. In the books, he wears like a silk red fucking robes. He's got drip. Pycelle in the books actually has like crimson drip. And it's like, damn. Hell yeah, Pycelle. I respect it. Of ships, and both Margaery and Olenna plan to marry Sam. Is Garland's wife green or red apple Fossaway? We don't actually know that. We haven't been told. We're just told that she's like a pretty dainty young woman who gets on with Garland, and similarly like Garland, she is very kind to Tyrion, and, you know, she seems pretty cool. Sansa Stark to Willis, securing the north. This plan is scuppered, and Sansa is instead married to Tyrion Lannister. The shrewd Olenna would rather marry her granddaughter to the sweet young Tommen, and the scheming Littlefinger likes to create chaos.
Together they plot to...
This is a controversial part of the video. Some people said to me that I shouldn't have stated this so objectively because it's not actually confirmed that Littlefinger and Olenna work together to poison Joffrey. That's what Littlefinger tells Sansa. That doesn't mean it's true. That's how it is in the show. That doesn't mean it's true. But just for the sake of simplicity, I'm sort of presenting it as an objective fact. I also am inclined to think it is true. But there we go.
Poison Joffrey.
Pycelle should be without a beard. Oh, that's a really good point. That's an excellent point. See, this is why it's so cool being able to chat with you guys. Like, yeah, this is like a Game of Thrones, a Clash of Kings to Pycelle. Tyrion has his beard shaved off and then he struggles to grow it back. You're right, he should have like kind of pathetic wisps. Good call, people, good call. Oh, but yes, I didn't really talk about this bit. The Tyrells tried to marry Sansa to Willis, obviously, and that doesn't work out.
Tommen and the scheming Littlefinger likes to create chaos. Together they plot to poison Joffrey at his own wedding.
I had a character model of Joffrey being poisoned, but for some reason...
Plots to poison Joffrey at his own wedding.
For some reason, the character model didn't include the crown, and I didn't have time to give him a crown, so his crown just vanishes, but...
And the blame falls on Tyrion Lannister. The furious Mace serves as a less than biased judge.
So yeah, the three judges on Tyrion's trial are Tywin, Oberyn, and Mace.
On Tyrion's trial. He insists that Margaery wed King Tommen.
Yeah, there are theories that the pie is what was poisoned, and that Tyrion ate the pie, and that Joffrey wasn't meant to die, that maybe he was meant to be poisoning someone else, or that it's sort of a big misdirect. I don't know. Yeah.
And Tywin concedes. After Tywin's murder...
Ooh. Also, can I just say how cool I made the Sept of Baelor look? Not to blow my own trumpet, but...
And Tywin...
So that's cool. That's a cool little thing. So yeah, she has the flowers in her hair, and she has the cloak, because in the wedding ceremonies in Westeros, the bride wears the cloak of their house, and then the groom takes the cloak off and puts on a new cloak, which is the cloak of the groom's house. So she's wearing the Lannister... Oh, she's wearing the Lannister red. That doesn't make sense. She should be wearing Baratheon colours. Oh, that's awkward. Whoops.
Concedes. After Tywin's murder, Queen Cersei becomes the regent.
I know Preston Jacobs has a theory about the poisoning, but I'm not entirely sure what it is, or I don't remember. Can't remember if I've seen that one. Yeah, I don't know. I think the issue is I'm not a fan of things. I'm not a fan of everything just constantly being a conspiracy, like everything being this overly complicated thing, and you think you've learned the truth, but it's actually a misdirect. Because I feel like there's too much of that, and that's basically what all the theories are. And it would almost be a bit eye-rolling to learn, like after all this time, it wasn't actually the wine, it was actually the pie, and it wasn't Littlefinger's on Olenna, it was this person, and it's just like, do we need more sort of detail and complexity and conspiracy and subversion and twists? Like, do we need that? Like, we've moved on from that plot point, you know? It feels a bit, I don't know.
She grows paranoid.
Maybe that's me being a bitch, though.
Of Tyrell plotting, both real and imagined. She replaces Mace with Aurane Waters.
Hey, the Sigma of Westeros. If you haven't already, check out my old video, Aurane Waters.
Replaces Mace.
Aurane Waters, the Sigma of Westeros.
With Aurane Waters.
Slightly tongue-in-cheek video. Very old video. Talking about Aurane Waters being just a pure Sigma who just fucking becomes Lord Admiral just because he's hot. And then asks to build a giant fleet. And then staffs that fleet with criminals. And then flees with that fleet and becomes potentially a pirate king. I mean, what an absolute legend. What an absolute legend. And tasks him with capturing Storm's End from... This is Mathis Rowan, by the way. Just throwing out there.
Gilbert Farry, while sending Loras Tyrell to lead the siege of Dragonstone. If we can believe Aurane's reports, Loras has sustained...
This is the Harrenhal background. I didn't have time to do the Storm's End background. I'm a hack. Shh, don't tell anyone.
Injuries from arrows, a mace, and a boiling oil.
This is a grim image. Rest in peace, Loras.
Meanwhile,
So, that's going to be the next poll, I think. Do we believe Loras Tyrell is dying/dead? So the idea here is that we are told that he led this because, Cersei deliberately is like, take Dragonstone, and then because she's always making the wrong decision, everyone's like, what are you talking about? The Ironborn are amassing in the west. I've got my directions for a second now. They're amassing in the west, they're attacking the Reach, we need our fleet there. And said, she's like, no, you must attack Dragonstone because it's still being held by Stannis loyalists and it's just pointless. And Loras tries to prove himself, and apparently he gets wounded and covered in boiling oil, and he's dying or he's dead. Although there's a theory that this is a lie, that for whatever reason the Tyrells are messing with her, or someone's messing with her, and he's actually fine, and it was a way to fuck with Cersei. I don't fully understand why or how, like what the point of that is. But who knows? I want to hear your takes about that, because I don't know. This is one of the theories where I'm like, I genuinely have no clue. It could be either way. If Loras is dead, that's really depressing, but it gives the Tyrells a reason to just despise Cersei even more. If he does survive, but he's all fucked up by the burning oil, where his face is all whatever messed up, that could be interesting, because he's a handsome guy, and maybe that could lead him down an interesting path. Because Gurm loves to maim his characters, doesn't he? He likes to drop them to the floor, where they either shatter into a million pieces, or they break just enough for him to be able to fix them back together and create something new. Okay. So, is Loras... I'm going to write, is Loras dead? So do you think he's dead/scarred, or do you think that he's alive and Cersei's being tricked for some reason? So the poll is in the chat. Let me know. I want to know what people think. I'm just looking at some of the old chat from when I was talking about the poisoning. Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, if Dragons... Okay, Jace says, both theories have flaws. If Dragonstone did fall, why don't Jon and Stannis talk about it? If Loras didn't get wounded, how come Aurane kept all the Lannister soldiers from telling the truth? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, let's check the poll. 41 votes are in, 71% say no, Loras is not dead, that's a landslide. Seems like you people think that either he survived or it's just a complete lie and he's doing fine. Okay. Willis Tyrell orders Lord Leighton Hightower to strengthen the defences of Old Town against Euron's approaching fleet, while Garland Tyrell breaks off his siege of Brightwater Keep to try and retake the Shield Islands from the Ironborn. With the Tyrells absent, Cersei plots against Marjorie. She sends her... Okay. So yeah. Willis and Garland are busy. We had some fun little cameo here. Hold on. So here I drew 3 of Marjorie's handmaidens. And they're all sort of like distant cousins and so on. I can't remember any of their names. Oh yes, this one is... Okay, I forget her name, but she's young and she's shy. This one is fat and loud and wants to marry Mark Mullendore, who's a one-armed man with the monkey. Long story. And this is Eleanor Tyrell, who is betrothed to... betrothed to an Ambrose knight, I believe. Betrothed to someone in House Ambrose, maybe? Is that true? I cannot remember. No, not Ambrose. She's betrothed to someone, but apparently she's quite flirty, and she has been imprisoned along with the others by the Faith, because of course they're all being accused of sleeping around and being aware of Margaery sleeping around and committing treason and so on mostly false charges, right? Yes, there we go. Alla, Mega, and Eleanor. Alla Tyrell, Eleanor Tyrell, Mega Tyrell. There we go. I don't know why Eleanor looks so angry. I didn't want to make her angry. They're Margaery's mean girls.
She sends her lackey, Sir Osney Kettle.
Hey, the Kettleblacks. I'm not gonna lie, I fucking love the Kettleblacks. I don't know why. I just do. I really like the Kettleblacks. They're just like a fun character. They're just fun characters, you know. So for those who don't know, the Kettleblacks are 3 mercenaries who are initially hired by Tyrion, but then when Tyrion is arrested, they're hired by Cersei and they become her lackeys. Their father is an old man. I can't remember his name. They've all got stupid names, but Daddy Kettleblack is in the service of Littlefinger, and so fans have speculated that the Kettleblacks are actually basically all working for Littlefinger, but pretending to work for Tyrion and Cersei, and then feeding information back to Littlefinger. But they're all kind of, you know, they're hook-to-nose, 6-foot thugs who do Cersei's bidding. The eldest, I think, is Sir Osmond, who's in the Kingsguard. The middle one is Sir Oswell, who is the captain of the City Watch. And the youngest is Sir Osfrid, who is Cersei's personal guard or something like that. And she basically sleeps with all of them and gets them to do her bidding. So the youngest of the brothers, she pays them with money and sex. So the youngest brother, she gets him to murder the High Septon so that the High Sparrow can take over, which is a plot point I'm surprised they didn't do in the show. Like, one of the most baffling parts of season 5 is that so much is crammed into season 5, but it's also an incredibly slow season. And like, there's so much cool conspiracy shit that goes down in the books, with Cersei accumulating power, assassinating the High Septon, getting the High Sparrow in, creating a giant Anne Boleyn-style conspiracy against Margaery, which then backfires. Load of people get falsely accused. Load of people get arrested. It's chaos. But in the books, they just in the show, they just abandoned all of that. And it's like, the big conspiracy just becomes Loras had sex with a man and Margaery knew about it and he's in prison and they're both in prison. It's so boring. It's like, what? Yeah. Like they could, and the High Septon just gets like dismissed from his position because there's a scene where he's in the brothel and they dismiss him, and then wouldn't it have been way cooler if like like Meryn Trant like smothered him with a pillow like in the books? I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, yes, the Kettleblacks are just like really nasty people. And they murder and they conspire and so on. And Cersei comes up with a very, very interesting plot, which is essentially this guy, Osfrid Kettleblack, will seduce Margaery and then confess his treason to the High Sparrow and say, look, I'm so sorry, I slept with the Queen. Margaery will then get arrested and then, you know, killed by the Faith. Therefore, Cersei can get her claws into Tommen and get him back because she's a paranoid bitch. And then she will determine that because he confessed his sins, he will go to the Wall. Then Osfrid goes to the Wall, where he will assassinate Jon Snow because Cersei is paranoid that there's a Stark that's gained so much power at the Night's Watch. And then he will be pardoned quietly, where he will come back to King's Landing and then will be paid a fuck ton of money and maybe given some land. So it's a very weird, messy plot. Yeah. In the books, it was Osney, not Meryn. Yes, in the books, one of the Kettleblacks murders the the High Septon. But what I was saying is because the Kettleblacks aren't in the show, they could have had like Meryn Trant do it instead. But yeah, it's a batshit insane plan.
The Black to try and seduce her, and when that fails, he falsely.
So yeah, it fails. So Marjorie is very flirty, but and she does flirt with the Kettleblacks, but Osfrid, is it? I can't remember any of their names. Fucking hell. It does flirt with him, but she doesn't go all the way, and it's sort of up to the reader's interpretation as to whether or not she has actually lost her virginity, because she flirts a lot, and apparently her maidenhead is broken, but she also rides horses, and that happens to women when they ride horses, so it's unknown. And apparently Moon Tea, maybe the Moon Tea was for one of her cousins. In Kevin's epilogue POV, he does think it's strange that Mace and everyone else are so aggressive in marching back to the city and demanding her be released, almost like they're overcompensating, like they know that she is actually guilty. But I don't go into it too much, but in the book, the plot it goes beyond this. It's after she doesn't actually sleep with him, Cersei's like, okay, confess anyway, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to arrest a bunch of random people, and we're going to accuse all of them of sleeping with Marjorie. Some of them will be found guilty, so we don't come across as too suspicious. And then some of them will be found innocent. Some will be found innocent so that they don't come across as too suspicious, and the rest will be found guilty. So, for example, the Red Wine twins are arrested, but the idea is they'll release them, and it was just a precaution, right? But then the Blue Bard is tortured into confessing. But the issue is that, the High Sparrow isn't dumb, the Faith aren't dumb, the Crown isn't dumb. They're like, the evidence is weak. Everyone is denying these charges, apart from the Blue Bard, who has been tortured into insanity, and he's confessing to anything. Yeah. So Marjorie probably will be found innocent. But another thing is that when he comes to confess to the Faith, the High Sparrow is suspicious. Because Osfrid... Is it Osfrid or Osney? I have a feeling it might be Osney. I'll call him Osney. Very annoying. Osmond, Osfrid, Osney, Jesus. Anyway, Osney confesses, and the High Sparrow is like, you're confessing very eagerly, aren't you? Like, you're coming up to here, you gotta skipping your skep, and you're like, hey, I just gotta confess, I slept with Marjorie. And so he doesn't trust him, and so he has him tortured. And under torture, he confesses that he didn't sleep with Marjorie, he slept with Cersei, and he also murdered the previous High Septon for Cersei. And so he is currently scheduled for death. And the other two Kettleblacks have also been arrested because they have both slept with Cersei. And it's possible that one or both might try to demand a trial by combat, in which case it's them against the Crown, and so that means the Crown's champion would be a Knight of the Kingsguard, and Robert Strong is on the Kingsguard, so the Kettleblacks are either being executed or being destroyed by the zombie mountain. So either way, the Kettleblacks are all fucked. And he also has scars on his cheek from when he was slashed in the face by Alayaya? Is it Chitaya or Alalaya? I can't remember. But he gets scratched by a prostitute. Long story. But yeah, I'll talk about this.
Confesses his carnal relations to the High Sparrow. I'll deal with the insanity of this plot in a future video.
I'm wearing Tyrell green for this video. But yeah, I'll talk about this in a future video just because I want to do the series of historical comparison animated videos where it's like, the Red Wedding in real life, comparing it to the Black Dinner and the Glencoe Massacre, and Bravos being similar to Venice, the Lannisters being similar to the Lancasters, and also the Borgias, and also this and that. And likewise, I want to do a comparison between Cersei's plot against Marjorie to the plot against Anne Boleyn. Which included torturing people and getting them to confess to sleeping with her, including her own brother and so on. Or I might just do a video that's purely about the plot itself. I don't know. Should I do a Kettleblack video? That could be fun. Anyway.
But for now, let's stick to the basics. Marjorie is imprisoned by the Faith on charges of adultery and treason. The evidence is weak, but it doesn't stop Mace Tyrell from abandoning his siege and furiously marching back to King's Landing.
Yeah, the evidence is extremely weak, because it's just a tortured guy and a bunch of innocent people. the Kettleblacks are fucked though. Because Cersei's being accused... No, the Walk of Shame was Cersei's punishment for infidelity. So she's now done the Walk of Shame and she'd be punished for that, but the charge of regicide still remains, because Lancel confessed to sleeping with her, but also confessed to murdering King Robert for her, and Osney confessed to her ordering the assassination of the High Septon and so on. So Cersei's in trouble, and the Kettleblacks are in trouble too. So where does House Tyrell stand by the end of the latest book? With Cersei imprisoned, Sir Kevan Lannister becomes the new regent and placates the Tyrells by naming Mace as Hand of the King and giving 2 of his bannermen... This is such a cool epilogue, really. After Cersei's arrested, Kevan just has to deal with the shit. Deal with all the shit that's happened, and so he's the regent. Mace becomes the Hand, and he's very pissed off. Oh, I used the wrong Mace character. I didn't use the one with the hand chain. That's a shame. But Paxter Redwine, his vassal and brother-in-law, becomes Master of Ships, and Randall Tarley, his vassal, becomes Master of Law. Pycelle is the Maester, and Harris Swift is Master of Coin. Qyburn is Master of Whispers. My throat made a weird noise there, made like a gurgling noise. Important council positions. Mace refuses to return to Storm's End. Marjorie's trial is coming up. Willis and Garland are... Oh, yes. I mentioned... I thought I mentioned it in this video. I mentioned it in the secret... In the Mace Tyrell... giving 2 of his bannermen in Secret Genius video. But Mace wants his uncle, Garth the Gross, the Lord Seneschal of Highgarden, to be the new Master of Coin. And interestingly enough, there is actually a theory... there's a theory which states that Sir Harris Swift will die in Bravos. So Sir Harris Swift, he's a bit of a meme, he's a bit of a joke, he's an idiot, he's incompetent, and his sigil is a blue cock, like literally a big blue cock on yellow. And so the theory is that he's been sent to Bravos to negotiate with the Iron Bank. And the Bravos, the Bravosi, or specifically the Bravos, who are the swaggering, fighters, take offence to certain garish colours and consider it an insult or a call to action when certain people wear certain colours. So they'll see a man in like a bright yellow doublet with a bright blue cock, a bright blue chicken on his vest, and they're gonna be like, "Oh, you think you own these streets?" And they're gonna challenge him to a duel and fucking kill him. Which unfortunately means that he'll be dead and the position of Master of Coin will be open. And the theory, well, putting 2 theories together, I think Harris Swift will die in Bravos, and then Mace will appoint his uncle to be the Master of Coin, and Garth the Gross will be Master of Coin. And meanwhile, Varys assassinates Kevan Lannister to cause chaos. But what a lot of people don't talk about is Varys assassinating Pycelle. Now, Kevan is a figure of stability. Varys doesn't want stability. He wants as much chaos as possible before young Griff arrives. So why does that make sense? But why does he kill Pycelle? Well, apparently he kills Pycelle because in the 3rd book, I believe, Pycelle has been stripped of his position by Tyrion, and they need a new Grand Maester, and Mace Tyrell wants his uncle Gorman, to be sent over. I think the Conclave appoint Gorman, but you could argue that it's very obviously like Mace Tyrell using the Tyrells using the influence. And then Tywin doesn't want any more Tyrell influence, so he quickly restores Pycelle, who's a Lannister toady, of course. But with Pycelle dead, it could be that Gorman Tyrell is now going to be sent over. And so what will happen there? We're going to have Mace as the Hand, Paxter Redwine as the Master of Ships, Randall Tarley as the Master of Law, Gorman Tyrell as the Grand Maester, and Garth the Gross as the Master of Coin, meaning that Tyrells in law, and Tyrell vassals will be sitting the small council, and the only odd one out will be Qyburn as the Master of Whispers, which is basically giving the Tyrells more control in what I assume is an attempt to increase Cersei's paranoia and push her into doing something even worse. because she's paranoid about Tyrion living in the walls. She's paranoid about Tyrion working with the Tyrells and Tyrell influence and power. And if the Tyrells are literally taking over the small council, she's going to go insane and do crazy shit. Maybe the kind of stuff she did in the show, like blowing up the Sept of Baelor or some kind of mass murder or whatever. But sowing chaos. In order, as provoked by Varys into sowing chaos so that Aegon can take King's Landing. But yeah, it's gonna be a Tyrell sweep, as I say in Quinn's video. It's just gonna be Tyrell and Tyrell lackeys just owning the small council. Oh, did I miss a super chat? My bad. Oh, I did. Thank you for the super chat from Samantha. Very sorry about that. Samantha says, like the missing Tyrell siblings, which other plots do you think should have been included in the show's middle seasons? I mean, I guess we're kind of talking about it. The full extent of Cersei's plotting in King's Landing should have been in that season 5 and 6. The entire conspiracy against Marjorie, the Kettleblack lackeys, all of that stuff with Cersei that was watered down should have been included, for sure. And the other one that stands out to me, quite honestly, is Jaime. Jaime's arc in the Riverlands, properly dealing with the Siege of Riverrun as an arc, not just as a 2-episode distraction or filler like in the show, but an actual arc. Him dealing with the Siege of Riverrun, him exploring the Riverlands, him dealing with the Blackwoods and the Brackens, and him becoming a commander, him evolving more. That's what we should have seen. I saw someone ask a question about the Kettleblacks earlier. It's not a super chat, but I'll answer it anyway. What was it? It was, do the Kettleblacks have a coat of arms? Yes. The Kettleblacks, the Kettleblack coat of arms is literally a black kettle on red. Yeah, I know, creative. Let me continue this. Important council positions. Mace refuses to return to Storm's End. Marjorie's trial is coming up. Willis and Garland are preparing for war against the Ironborn. And Schrodinger's Loras is either alive or dead. Will the Tyrells... Shout out to Schrodinger's Loras. Oh, this is the post Walk of Shame Cersei. So in the show, her hair gets cut short and she sort of keeps that look. But in the book, her hair is fully shaved. It's not cut short, it's like completely bald. And she's so sort of embarrassed by it that she wears a green mantle over her head. Yeah. Cersei Lannister's fury. Will they survive young Griff's invasion? These are also old character models of young Griff and Aegon. I need to change them because they're very, they're kind of naff looking. Or are you more interested in brutal northern houses? If so, check out this cheeky transition. Well, there we go. What's that noise? Sounds like someone's cutting the hedges outside. Cool. Well, there we go. We've run through the video. We've talked a lot about the Tyrells, and we went on lots of tangents. This is the last call for questions and super chats. So send in any super chats you want, and I will answer them. Hooded Cersei is kind of cool. It is a cool image. Her with like a green hood and like her green eyes, and she's just like in her green crown. Oh, there we go. There we go. Another batch for Gitmo. My animations are a better adaptation than the show. I'm not so sure about that. People like the Schrodinger's Loras comment, huh? That's what he is. He's Schrodinger's Loras. These are very rambly live streams. That's what you get from Fancy Haven. You don't get the Alt-Shift-X live streams where everything is very... He talks very slowly and he talks very eloquently and he goes through everything one by one and it's very methodical and you can fall asleep to it, but you don't want to because it's so interesting. With me, it's more like I'm like ADHD shuffling in my chair, jumping between each topic, saying talk about this and that. Took us 2 hours to comment over a 12-minute video. My goodness. She does kind of look like a Grinch, you're right. Anyway, if no more super chats, no more any last minute questions. If not, then all I can say is thank you so much for watching. You're amazing. Like and subscribe. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Comment to help it spread. Watch my old videos again to help it grow. 18k subs, but we're still a growing channel, and we want to get even bigger. Right? We want to be professional. And we're doing well because a quick timeline of what's to come. So my next video will be a CK3 video, every house explained. It will either be next Friday or the Friday after, but it will be every house in the Reach explained, which will take a long time to prepare because there's lots of houses, but that'll be a fun CK3 one for a change of pace. And then, not this Monday, but the Monday after, will be the 1 year anniversary of Fantasy Haven. And I'll do a live stream reacting to my old videos and so on. And we'll see how much. I want to try and get 20k subs before that live stream. That could be fun. 20k subs before the anniversary. Because even so, 18k subs in a year is pretty good, but we can go higher. Also, I sort of have two. Before I finish, I kind of have two. I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, I kind of have two anniversaries. So I have the 25th of September, which is the date I literally set up my YouTube channel, and on that same day I uploaded my first video, which was the House of the Dragon episode 1 review. But also I then, I posted 10 reviews, and then I didn't post for a couple of months, and then I quit my job, and then I became a YouTuber full time, starting with the 2nd of January when I posted the best episode of Hot D, and then from then on I started growing. So in terms of my technical 1 year anniversary, it's the 25th of September. In terms of the anniversary of me actually starting my YouTube career, it's the 1st of the year. So it's the 2nd of January, but we can just say the 1st of January basically, because by the 1st of January I had 19 subscribers, So I'll celebrate. It's like I'm like the Queen or the King of England. I've got 2 birthdays. There's the real one, and then there's the ceremonial one. So the one coming up is my real one, but then on New Year's Day of 2024, that would be the ceremonial 1 year, because that's when I really started. Anyway, I'm once again going on a tangent. Thank you, Professor 13N, for the super chat. Thank you so much. They ask, what do you think Stannis' reaction will be to the Tyrells after he wins, of course? King Stannis, flaming heart emoji, and his Master of Whispers, Mace Tyrell, flaming heart emoji. You are on some copium right now, my friend. Or hopium, rather. Yeah, I'm sorry. Mace will not be Stannis' Master of Whispers. Stannis will not be the king. Stannis is not making it out of the North, unfortunately. He's destined to die in the North, I think. Yeah, I think, were he successful, I think he would have to reward the Florents by giving them Highgarden. So he'd probably strip the Tyrells of their land, honestly. Yeah. ADHD is a gift. It can be. I try to view it positively. Allows me to be creative and to think outside the box and to do things in a way other people can't, but it also has its downsides. But there we go. Where in England are you? I'm not in England, I'm in Guantanamo Bay. That's where I live. That's why you always hear the planes flying overhead. They're bringing prisoners in. Cool, well, I think I'm going to wrap up there. Thank you so much for watching. There we go. There might be some more live streams coming out this week on House Tyrell. Next weekend, I definitely want to do some joint live streams with Quinn the GM. And if you're following my Forest of Doom Choose Your Own Adventure books, where you guys get to vote on every action I take, I'm going to probably do more of that next week as well. With our new character. What was his name? People voted on his name being... what was it? Sir Preston Lightbringer, that's it, yeah. Anyway, I will see you when I see you. Bye. Thanks for watching.